Call ourselves to order for our regular council meeting of Monday, July 17th. I'd like to welcome everyone to council. Can't start today without expressing our sincere thoughts to our neighbors in southern BC. I don't think I ever remember the kind of tragedy and events that are going on to the southern part of our province, and the magnitude of that impact to residents and folks down there obviously is significant, and we've been reaching out where we can to offer our support as a city in terms of resources and support wherever we can. But just wanted to say how much we are all thinking about them and wishing and hoping for a little bit of the rain we've been getting to help lessen that risk and that damage that's going on. So our first order of business this morning is new councillor business. 2.1, we have Councillor Javekov.
Okay, I've got a motion. I won't read the preamble, but I'll read the motion. And it's been amended a slight amount from the original motion. I move that a committee of council involve MLA Bernier and the Mile Zero Park Society to collectively advise the Minister of Health that Rotary Lake is a vital amenity for the people of the South Peace, and rescinding its status is not acceptable, and an immediate solution to allow the opening of Rotary Lake this summer be provided.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor McFadden. Discussion. Councillor Schumann.
So I've been away on vacation, and I'm just now catching up with the letters that have been floating around. And I just want to say for the record that I happen to agree with Northern Health, and I'm not going to support this motion. I was devastated when the young woman died in that lake, and I feel like if we're going to continue on with this lake in our community, that we need to do something more to bring it up to standards that would be acceptable to Northern Health, that would be acceptable to the province, and so I'm going to vote against this.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers.
Your Worship, without having involvement from the ML.
Your mic.
Sorry. Without having involvement with the MLAs and with the Mile Zero Park Society, we'll never ever find out what standards that Northern Health would be acceptable to Northern Health. There's been some talk about the city not assuming full responsibility of that facility, which I find is utter nonsense, to be quite honest. The city is very involved with Rotary, with the Mile Zero Park Society. And I just feel that we get updates from the Mile Zero Park Society. We have a couple of councillors that are very active with the Mile Zero Park Society, and I think that that the closing of the lake is been proven through the citizens of Dawson Creek that is not acceptable to the citizens of Dawson Creek. It's a key amenity for the region. I've seen emails from people outside of our city boundaries that use the facility, that come here for that reason, because that is there. There is also talk about water quality. I don't think that there's ever been an incident because of the water quality at that facility. We've had since 1967, there's been 2 fatalities. Yes, very unfortunate. There's also been talk about, well, there should be a lifeguard there and everything else, but I go, well, BC government has all these provincial parks throughout the province that are along lakes and streams and stuff like that. There's no lifeguards there either. Does this mean that if somebody were to be crossing the road from Tubby's and get struck by a car or something like that, does that now mean that we have to have a crossing guard there? If somebody has a fender bender in the parking lot, Does that mean we have to have parking lot attendants? I think that some of the things that that Northern Health is asking for are not is not being what's been done throughout the rest of the province and throughout everywhere else. It's just that they seem to have a problem with the designation of Rotary Lake. It's not a pool. It's actually, it's been called Rotary Lake since 1967. I just think that it's a facility that the citizens of Dawson Creek want, use, and it benefits people in our region as well. And I do believe that with the amount of investment that's gone in down there, it's a key piece of infrastructure for our city. And I think that we should do everything that we can to maintain that infrastructure.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow and Councillor Javetkov.
Yeah, well, I concur with Councillor Rogers, but I'm wondering, Mayor, if it would be appropriate at this time to allow the president of the Mile Zero Park Society to speak. I know it requires unanimous, but I think some information needs to be shed on the discussion.
Sure, and it does require a motion to of unanimous consent. So to have somebody from the gallery speak. So, Councillor Javetkov.
I'll make the motion.
Seconded. Councillor Rogers. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So absolutely, Dale, if you'd like to speak to council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councillors. Small typing on some notes I made. That's due, I'm trying to, I guess, counter the amount of words of no substance with little words, lots of substance here. Anyway, closure order of the lake in 18 August 2016. As a result of a tragic event, a drowning at Rotary Lake, Northern Health issued a closure order as they deemed a suction hazard, health hazard, existed. The order would remain in effect until Northern Health conducted an investigation and Northern Health was satisfied that that health hazard identified in the order no longer existed. The Southeast Mile Zero Park Society suggested two remedies to eliminate the suction or entrapment hazard: using different fasteners on the drain cover and installing a suction release valve. With permission to winterize Rotary Lake, which included installing the drain cover, we used the new fasteners to the drain cover and refilled the lake with water. The Park Society then asked permission to install the suction release valve and asked that the order be removed or rescinded. The response was the order would stay in effect and the Northern Health engineer would have to review our plans, and these plans are normally engineered plans. Once an engineer familiar with pool regulations was hired, the information he needed to design a system that might satisfy Northern Health was not in existence. The recirculation system at Rotary Lake never had flow meters or vacuum pressure meters installed when constructed, and there was no data plates on the pump indicating volume or pressure. With permission to drain the lake this spring so that it could not be used, the suction release valve was installed, and it included a vacuum pressure gauge. The reading of this gauge and the data from the manufacturer of the impeller on their spare pump was enough for our engineer to design a drain system which would have less than 1.5 cubic meter per second flow, a requirement in the pool regulation. The designs were to tee into the existing suction line and have two ready-made drain sumps, including covers, installed, more than 6 feet apart. The Northern Health engineer reviewed these plans and has all the information needed to make his recommendations. Most of the questions asked as a result of the closure order had a pool regulation background, i.e., how is the lake cleaned, protocol and logs on turbidity, etc. Regarding the letter from Northern Health to the provincial health officer, recommending the rescinding of the pool regulation exemption. From the start of construction of Rotary Lake in 1963, Northern Health and its predecessors have been trying to shut the lake down as they deemed it a health hazard simply because it did not meet the swimming pool regulated standards. In 1989, with political help, the city was able to have Rotary Lake exempted from the entire regulation. The city was to be responsible for the safe operation of the lake, which was clarified that the Ministry of Health would monitor the facility as a beach and that the same guidelines will apply as are commonly applied to all public beaches in the province. Rotary Lake is the cleanest, safest lake beach in the province. We use city water which is filtered and chlorinated. When due to heavy rainfall, flooding, or other reasons that water quality can't be maintained, by our system, we drain the lake and refill with clean city water. As sad as it may be, accidents and drowning happen in swimming pools and lakes. Lakes are used at your own risk. When using a lake, the user is accepting possible health hazard risks and are responsible for the supervision of all at-risk members of their family. Being monitored as a lake, beach, there is no justification or actual hazard identified in the recommendation being made to rescind that exemption. Just because someone says something is unsafe does not make it unsafe unless proven using the correct context. A non-compliance in a regulation doesn't make a health hazard. The Southeast Malazura Park Society has operated Rotary Lake for many years and renewed an agreement which expires in 2018. On behalf of the Park Society and the Dawson Creek community, I ask the council use all legal and/or political means to have the order removed so that we can reopen the lake with the new drain system and have the request by Northern Health for rescinding the exemption dismissed.
Thank you, Dale. So now we'll go back to council, please. Councillor Javetkov.
So, Rotary Lake was established about 60 years ago by the Rotary Club for the benefit of the people of Dawson Creek and the area. It went through a lot of changes. Originally, it was a pool that was carved out of the existing soil. There was no surfacing. And since then, it's been surfaced, it's been improved. There's been chlorination added to it. The city is definitely looking after it. For the health people, I mean, they've been obsessed with this designation of a lake since it was implemented. And they've been trying by any means to change it into a pool standard. I spent about 10 years with the Malazura Park Society, and I was involved personally with the chlorination system and the training the staff and the daily, I think twice daily checks of the chlorine in the water. To me, and witnessing the use of it, the families, and many of the families are low income. They go down there and for no cost, they can take their family in there and spread a blanket on the lawn and enjoy the lake. And like I say, it's been there just about 60 years. Like for the health people, and many of them aren't from here, you know, they're from somewhere else. You hear, well, you know, back at home they do this and that. This has been a safe, valuable amenity since it was opened up. the last resurfacing was done by the Rotary Club for a considerable cost. It was probably close to $75,000 to resurface that, to resurface the lake. This is a community facility. It's designated as a lake. The health people keep coming back and trying to implement pool regulations. It is not a pool, and I think Dale's comment here, and I'd just like to reread it. Rotary Lake is the cleanest, safest lake beach in the province. We use city water, which is filtered and chlorinated. When due to heavy rainfall, flooding, or other reasons, that water quality can't be maintained by our system, we drain the lake and refill with clean city water. So every effort is made by the city and by the operators to make the thing safe. And it's used extensively by families. This year, you know, it's been cooler. I mean, maybe the use would be reduced somewhat, but even now, I mean, you could have families go down there every day and enjoy the facility. So we have to do everything in our power to drive that point home again like we have before. I know when Blair was involved with it, I don't know, about 15 or 18 years ago, it was the same scenario. The city had to make representation in Victoria and reestablish the fact that this is a lake, not a pool. So I support the motion, and I hope everybody else does.
Thank you. I just want to clarify a couple of points in the relation to this. Is a recommendation coming from the Chief Medical Officer, the Chief Medical Health Officer, who is within Northern Health but reports to the Provincial Health Officer, and so it is a public health issue that we're dealing with, and it's exactly that. For the benefit of the public, it's the definition of a lake versus a pool is where it changes significantly the parameters around the operation and or implications to the operations of the lake for the city. And so, but it is a public health through to the Provincial Health Officer who is dealing with this. And I want to just clarify that a bit because it's not Northern Health. Although the Chief Medical Health Officer works for Northern Health within this region, they report directly to the Provincial Health Officer. So that's our, and the recommendation, I think the motion is appropriate that we make that move to get to the Ministry of Health and the Provincial Health Officer for this recommendation. Councillor Rogers?
Just for clarity, what is the public health risk? Like, what is the risk?
So the public health officer would always be involved in any type of risk that may exist, public health risk where the public may be at risk. And so it could be water, it could be air, it could be a whole gamut. And once they identify a public health risk, they report to the Provincial Health Officer, not to even the Minister of Health. And so that's why, because this is identified as their oversight is for public health, and they have jurisdiction to get involved where they identify a public health risk.
To me, that's such a broad statement. It's a public health risk. Well, yes, the air quality, that's a public health risk. Do we stop going outside?
Well,
It just,
yeah, and I'm just saying that's who has jurisdiction here, and so that's our. It's the Provincial Health Officer through the Chief Medical Health Officer within Northern Health that makes a recommendation, and then it's up to us to make our case to them if they are suggesting it be changed to a pool.
but they have never identified what the risk is. They did identify the risk. It was the suction grate. That's been corrected. So what is the other risk that has a justification for closing the pool? It's just, these are all the questions that are going to have to be answered, and as part of the motion, the only way to get those questions answered is through the motion.
Well, and that's why we're involved the MLA to move that forward. Councillor Javecka?
Just one other point, and just talking to Dale prior to the meeting, the splash park is designed as a component of the lake. It's not a standalone splash park. Could you elaborate there?
It's 100% standalone. It works in this part of the pool regulation, but it was never designed to be a feature unto itself. It was to enhance the greater part with the lake and everything else.
No.
It's a separate entity. It's under the pool regulations, that part of it, its own pumping system and that. But the design and the size of it was never designed to be a standalone feature where people come from all over just to go to it. It was to enhance the greater facility of Rotary Lake and the sandboxes and the swing sets and that down there.
Thank you.
That splash park can be open hopefully very shortly.
Councillor Wilburn?
Just a question to the delegate. So Dale, I noticed in the letter here that it says the Northern Health Engineer has all this information on these other pumps at 6 feet apart, and he had that as of Wednesday of last week. So did that just get given to him
He
or
had-
her?
Yes, there's memos going back and forth, and I have references to us. If this committee gets set up, well, then I've got a lot of background which would really support what we're trying to do. And yes, they're playing one thing against the other.
Okay, so you haven't heard back from that Northern Health Engineer since them receiving?
The recommendation, they made comment that they have received it too.
Okay. So, through you to staff, your worship, so I'm a little confused on how much we can talk about and how much we can't, because some of this was discussed and closed. So, the concern for me is, we have these little bits and pieces all over the place, but we don't have it all together. And have we, as the city, have we even contacted the new chief medical officer that we have that's now stationed in Fort St. Like, have we had an actual conversation with the new chief medical officer? Like, I'm having a hard time supporting
Well, this letter is
motion
just-
because not all of it was discussed in open. A lot of it's been discussed and closed for just reasons. So it's really hard to sit here and make a decision on this motion and satisfy the public when we can't give them all the information. I'm having a hard time. I can't support this. I'm sorry. I'm having a hard time with it. I need to know from Northern Health that that information they got on the 12th is acceptable and that's what they need to move forward, and that we will be having checks, like when the showers are cleaned. I'm sure there's a check, it's signed off, it's checked. Yes, we check the chlorine, it's checked. In the spring, yes, we check the pumps, it's checked. And maybe, to me, that's some of the information that I thought Northern Health was looking for. And so I think as council and maybe through staff is have all that information put together and have that bigger conversation, because I'm having a hard time supporting something when not all the information can be put out there for the community. And so to sit here and say, I think Rotary Lake's been a great amenity to the community, I really do. But I have a hard time to say it's going to be safe and we know this is true when Northern Health hasn't even been able to give feedback on information they got on Wednesday. So I get what's trying to be accomplished here, but I have a hard time when most of the information that's been discussed in this chambers has been enclosed.
Yeah, so, and I can only say that the letter that has just from the first, the recommendation from Northern Health, or the medical health officer has just come on Thursday, so. Duncan?
Through your worship, I mean, it's how council wants to approach it. Another piece that Mr. Campbell identified in his letter was also utilizing the city's legal resources as well, which would be a first step in going down that road. Now, my understanding, working with Dale, we worked and put together an engineer that had worked in our pool, and that engineer submitted some drawings to Northern Health, and that came back with a number of further requests for information.
There's two issues here. One is a closure order, and it's a standalone thing, and we've met all the requirements. We're waiting for the result of the closure order of us meeting the design part of that. Besides that, a total separate thing is this recommendation to have it rescinded from the pool regulation, which that letter came in Thursday. So there's two separate things.
Okay, Councillor Dvekoff, one last time.
I'd just like to, I won't reread the motion, but the motion is for the a committee of council to get together with MLA Bernier to make representation to the Minister of Health that Rotary Lake as a lake is vital to our community. That's what the motion is.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, to me, the issues are very, very clear. There's the initial reason for the closure, which was to do with suction. That has been corrected, and everything's been calibrated for that. It's the long-going effort of some authorities to have this not designated as a lake, but as put it under swimming pool regulations. That is the issue. We don't need any more information about that. So we either express the community's desire to have that as a lake, as per the original previous designation, that it be monitored as a beach, or we abandon that. And I'm not for abandoning it at all. I think it's clear to me that there's widespread support for that as a lake. And so as a representative of the city, I'm prepared to go all the way in that regard. On a personal note, I don't know if the community fully appreciates the great deal of voluntary work that goes on with Mile Zero Park. It's a tremendous group of directors, tremendous committed group of employees, and a considerable amount of money's been put into this splash park. I think $300,000, linked in a sense as an amenity for the whole Rotary Lake operation there. You know, I find it very strange, you know, turbidity. Have anyone ever looked at the turbidity of Swan Lake, beaten by Charlie Lake? Wow. And you see the area there, the beach and the swimming area cordoned off by some buoys and so on. And this is so much better than the local watering holes. You know, yes, public health safety is very important. The water needs to be monitored. It is monitored. I think some of our own staff who are qualified do the monitoring. And for years, these vials of water were sent and looked at, have been perfectly okay. Accidents happen. Do we close a ski hill because somebody gets killed, hit in a tree? Or do we ban watercraft because somebody gets killed in the lakes? We know people die with lifeguards' presence in swimming pools. Do they get closed? To me, it's just ludicrous. So I support the motion 110%.
So I want to say two things at the end of this. And one, it was a horrific, tragic event. Anytime there's loss of life in a facility in the city or anywhere, it's a horrific, tragic event. And as Councillor Parslow has indicated, risks exist in every act of what we do every day. At the hockey arena, at the swimming pool, the riding arenas, at the rodeo grounds, at the climbing wall. And I take exception to some of the things that are contained within the Ministry of Children, or the Ministry of, or the public health officers, where we've completely abdicated the responsibilities. And we, as a city, look to minimize risk in everything we do and try to provide that services in our community and the highest quality services for the benefit of our residents. And I'm supporting the motion because I think we need to move this forward. It's been a facility that's provided thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of enjoyment for thousands of people in our community and our region. And I think we need to move it forward with the Ministry of Health and the Chief Medical Health Officer and the Provincial Health Officer to get this resolved. Councillor Wilbur, one last time, and then I'm calling question.
Okay, through you to staff, is the recommendation to rescind the status due to us not meeting the original recommendations that were put out by Northern Health? See, again, I'm worried on how much I can say, but I keep flashing in my head, refer to number 4 of the recommendations, and so, I've read that, I believe, in some of the correspondence we got over last week, but I'm just wondering if their recommendation to rescind the status is due to the fact we've not met the recommendations that were put forward by Northern Health, because I would like to know that we've met all of those recommendations before we go at them and say, you know, don't do this. I want to make sure we've covered off all of the recommendations first before we have that conversation. That's where my difficulty lies.
Chief-
So do we know that?
Chief Medical Health Officer's reasons for making the recommendation: it constitutes a health hazard. The city has not assumed responsibility for the safe operation of the facility. The statutory requirements of the Public Health Act alone are sufficient to ensure the public are not exposed to injuries or death at the facility. And the current exemption of the facility is an impediment to safeguarding public health and safety. So those are the 4 recommendations for removing it and keeping it as a...
And we can say that we have got that check,
Well,
including the information that was received
That's
on July 12th.
that's their opinion.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I'm calling question because we've had a half an hour of this. And questions on the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. We're at 9 o'clock. Thank you, Dale. We're at 9 o'clock and we have to get to our delegations. Thank you. Delegations now to 9, Ryan McIver and Brent Hodson and Melanie Moore from Spectre Venue Management regarding your 2016 annual report. Good morning, Ryan. Brent, good morning.
If it's it has to be heated. Oh, yeah. In that report, they did say how many, they said there was too many people in the pool. There was too many people in the pool. Water wasn't clear. So that's not the goal. Okay, what's the number? That's okay.
You don't need
Tell us the number. How many people you let on?
you.
They just keep coming up saying stuff.
I know, it just, typical bureaucrats.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Well, I wanted to really say that.
So good morning, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Hey, congratulations on that baby. Nobody's actually said it to you out loud.
What's he congratulating you for?
Oh, he's got a little girl, so now he's got a little bit. He's got a little bit more respect now.
I almost went to a concert in Penticton at their fancy thing, but I didn't.
Thank you. And congratulations.
All the counselors get their copy first. And then I can relay
Good morning. The floor is yours. You got
Morning.
your 10 minutes.
No comments on that?
I got nothing.
Okay, all right. Morning, thank you. First, just want to say hello. It's been just over a year since we were here last. Would have been here last meeting, but my wife and I were welcoming a new member to our family, so here we are. So this is a recap of 2016. I'm going to flip through a bunch of pages and get sort of to the key information here. Today I am joined with Brent Hodson, my Director of Marketing, but also Melanie Moore, who's my new Director of Finance, and Tyler Hopkins, who is my Director of Operations and is at the building tending to some facility stuff. But we're here to give you an update of how 2016 went, some of the opportunities and successes and such for you to highlight. So we'll get right to it. This will be the last year, I guess, 2016, that you'll see Mr. Shute in the publication. Going forward, 2017 will be Mr. Redfern. You know, one of the things that we highlight throughout the document and what we do is we talk about building the experiences throughout the venue in all aspects, whether it be marketing the events in terms of providing the engagement through social media, through ticketing and providing those opportunities, food services, and just the general experience. But it's more than that. It's turning the venue and opening the doors to the community and to the artists to provide the enjoyment and the opportunities, not just from a concert perspective, but also to whether it be private event rentals or just opening and having the building open for people to use the walking track and the many other opportunities that come with it. So we have the organizational chart. Last year sort of saw the full integration and rollout of all the change, the branding of the company, from Global Spectrum and Ovations Food Services and Fan One Marketing, etc., into sort of the Spectra aspect of it. And so what's important to that is really nothing has changed from the delivery of services that the company and what we provide you. It's just really a different name and some different modeling that has gone on with it. What we'd like to highlight for you under the food and beverage aspect is that although the company on the food and beverage side looks at over 250,000 events and handles 40 million guests on the food and beverage side across the company, what's important is that food and beverage is such a driving force to the business. And so with that, corporate, as it came up with a program to help further drive revenues to all the accounts. And with that, they came up with it's called the 3% challenge. Although 3% may not seem like a lot, but when you take that across all the accounts and transform that, the numbers are quite large. So with that, just in Dawson Creek, we leveraged almost an additional $9,000 in revenue by using non-traditional spaces, looking to open the venue a little bit earlier, creating food and beverage packages, adding on food and beverage to tickets, etc. So with that, we again generate additional $9,000 just on those specific things. And in the West, within the company, was additional $72,000. So there's just some different aspects in the hard copy there of just some of the things that we did and have done. And we continue to use the same aspects of leveraging some of those different event opportunities. Much like our business is like a cruise ship or an airline, once the event's gone, we don't have any other opportunity to sell food and beverage or have people come to the event. So every opportunity that we can leverage those opportunities to incentivize or give those opportunities to our fans is something that we need to capitalize with the events. Under corporate partnerships, just some different aspects. You know, we're looking, and I'm always looking, although we have our traditional methods with signage and within the building, we are always looking to do ways to use found inventory. And so this is just an example of some found inventory that we've been able to leverage within the facility. And then the picture below is just some of the sponsorship opportunities with respect to the Health and Wellness Expo in terms of the sponsoring and the opportunities to leverage those opportunities through the building. Under ticketing of our aspect, so what we like to talk about in 2016 is just the opportunity that we'll talk about a little bit in a little bit here, was the Tragically Hip viewing party. So we opened the building for free, but what we wanted to do is provide the opportunity to with the Tragically Hip, with their the sad news with their lead singer, is to, you know, provide the viewing party, but really taking it to the next level of, you know, providing the ticketing, doing the ticketing, providing that sort of that ticket as a reminder, as a keepsake, etc. And so we're looking at all those different avenues through all aspects of our business to leverage on every event. And so the ticketing in 2016, we started the aspect of some regional ticketing and further been exploring that. So we do the ticketing for Grizz Fest, we did the ticketing for Canola Fest last year, and a few at Onchaga Hall for the John Montgomery speech and presentation. And then we see that in 2017 as we really look to build out the brand of regional ticketing across the Peace River region and into the Grand Prairie market as well. This is the calendar of events, and although it's very small on the screen, there's a couple of events that I'd like to highlight. And you know, one I'll talk a little bit later, but the one that really sort of stands out to us on a couple of different aspects is the NCLGA Annual General Meeting in May. I think it was a great success, showcasing the venue and the aspects of it. My understanding was very well attended, and a significant amount of money was raised as well. So that's a great opportunity that you hosted within the city. Also, at the end of June there, our involvement with an assistance to the city with respect to the flooding and helping with the emergency operations, etc. Earlier in the year, we had a band come through called Disturbed, and it was a great success. As we talk about a little bit later, one of the biggest opportunities that have come out of some of the acts and artists that come through is just the social media and the exposure that the artists provide, just not only themselves, but how it leverages in the building. And I believe, and we can check the stats to get you the real number, but I believe that what happened was Disturbed redid a cover of Simon and Garfunkel's song, and what they filmed it at the building, and right now I believe it's over 3 million people have viewed the video of the entire thing. So when you think about the opportunities, the branding, and the exposure that the band gives, but it is in the Encana Event Center, it is in the city of Dawson Creek, and so those are some great opportunities for furthering the brand. You know, we've had some other events that happened in the building from, Dwight Yoakam, Mamma Mia came back in terms of the Broadway musical as their last touring show. And we ended the year with our last concert in November 17th of Florida Georgia Line. So next couple of pages are just images of the events and different things that have happened within the building, from graduation, The Price is Right Live, ZZ Top, Jeff Dunham. Unfortunately, we had to Photoshop the mayor out of Riverdance or his Dance in the Jig. I'm sorry, he didn't. Cutting room floor. No.
Why would you do that?
You were dressed appropriately.
So the next couple pages just talk about some of the press releases that have gone out, and some that are quite, really want to showcase is that in 2016, the Encana Event Center was placed number 196 in the world in terms of venues in the world. But when we really broke that down and understand the business, that Encana Event Center was placed number 17 in Canada in terms of ticket sales, number 5 in Western Canada, including British Columbia and Alberta. And then when you factor in the capacity, because we only have 4,800 seats depending on the production, we're really number 2 in Western Canada. So I think it's really important to share and tell that story, and that's why it's part of the annual report. The other aspect is the Red Cross, not only just the challenges that happened in the piece with the flooding and the fires and such in British Columbia, if we remember, but also in Fort McMurray. And so as part of our leveraging the ticketing system, what we did is we put up light boxes, an opportunity to make it easy for people to, when they purchase tickets, to add on 10, 20, dollars, etc. But also with that, we worked with some of our partners, Live Nation and some of the other events, where we had a limited amount of tickets. And what we did is the value of the ticket and all the fees, etc., all were captured and then donated back to the fire relief as well. So over $4,000 was raised and provided. So the next couple of pages just talk about the Tragically Hip, August 20th, proclaiming Tragically Hip Day, and then having the viewing party. We ordered in merchandise from the tour. We really wanted to create it as a unique opportunity, and in fact, because in fact Prince George didn't do a viewing party, we actually had 2 families drive from Prince George up to attend our viewing party, stay overnight, and experience the event as it was broadcast live. The big ticket, so we do this on an annual, and this is to drive to update our databases and to also look to increase our databases. But so it's an annual thing, so we do a big ticket where someone will win. In this case, they won $250 venue gift card, pizza for a year from Boston Pizza, Dawson Creek, but also a pair of tickets to every event that happens at the venue in 2016. The financial performance. So although our business ebbs and flows, some of it is looking into a crystal ball, a year and a half in advance. I really look at the numbers at the bottom line and go, we did really, really, really well. At the end of the day, the budget, the subsidy is $1,550,000, and we came under budget at $169,000. So that's a direct savings to the city of Dawson Creek, and that money just goes back to your pot, for lack of a better word, back to your general revenue. Although we didn't have quite a few events as we thought the budget was, we were able to leverage that gross ticket revenue. The direct event income, as you'll see there, that's quite a bit higher as it relates, and that's just necessary of putting on some of the events in terms of some of the production costs and actually doing the business of it. But where we see the opportunities that really flowed through was the increase in the ancillary and surcharge income and the increase in the other income. And you can also see there in the indirect expenses a savings of $250,000. And I'll go into a little bit on some of where those savings are. You can see the ticket breakdown. These are ticket orders, not number of tickets. So one person may buy 4, 6, or 8 tickets. So that's an order, not the number of tickets. So these numbers are very consistent within previous years. There hasn't been a lot of major change. I would tell you of interest is on the BC top 5 orders at Prince George. We've seen an increase in our business from Prince George, although it's 2% within BC. It's still of importance to us, as depending on the events that we do market to Prince George depending on what the event is. So upcoming would be Slayer would be a great example. We know I've received a phone call from someone going to be coming from Prince Rupert to come see Slayer. So depending on what the event is and how we market it and leverage it, we definitely see people coming from far to the events. So we do surveying our clientele. We do post-event surveys and we do an annual survey. And so this page just talks about some of there is hordes of data, and so we really just look at sort of identifying, although we look at all the data, we want to present to you just some interesting stats and facts here. So over 82% of the people that responded thought their overall experience was excellent and good. And over 95% indicated that they'll be back for another event. You can sort of see some of the demographics. And then on the post-event, so after every event, we send out a survey as well. And you can see some of the data there as well that we use within our business. Some of our key partners, obviously the City of Dawson Creek and IOTC Local 210, which is out of Edmonton. Their main office is out of Edmonton. So on the Connect page, this just talks about sort of our way that we market and use our social media. So we see an increase year over year over year over year of our engagement with it and the growth. So growth of 15% in Facebook. So Twitter, Instagram, and our My Entertainment Cyber Club, that's our database, our email database. And of importance as well is that back in July, we really started to start, as we can go back and dig into the numbers, just some important or interesting numbers that Brent sort of pulled from it, that since July 2016, our Cyber Club emails have reached over 643,000 people, which is an average of 16,000 people per email. And our Facebook posts have reached over 1,200,000 people, and we have over 262,000 Twitter, has reached over 262,000 Twitter accounts. One of the things that we, as the trends go, is that the newspapers are slowly, it's not that they're not important, but social media has really taken foot, as well as there's a lot more metrics that can be accounted for. What's important of that is an example where we spent approximately $400 on social media advertising, and we saw a return of $14,000 in revenue. So that would be in ticket sales. So for every $13.40 of the $13.40, if we break it down, so for every dollar spent, we made $13.40. Let's just rephrase it that way. So it's a really good bang for buck and a way for us to track how successful the events can be doing. Under the facility energy, this has really, been an ongoing thing. Is it's not just the facility of the Encana Event Center. This is the South Peace Community Multiplex. So some great successes here with the new record in 2016 with the lowest amount of money spent on natural gas. It's also the lowest amount of natural gas we've ever used, lowest amount of electricity we've ever used, and the lowest amount of electricity and natural gas combined, and the lowest amount of usage on electricity and natural gas combined. So a lot of sort of records have been broke last year, and that's a combination of investment in the energy aspects of the venue. That also comes back to just the staff across the three buildings under the one roof, really looking at ways to conserve energy. So when there's swim meets on, we're lowering the temperature of the pool. So, not only is it comfort for the swimmers, but it also, we're not heating all that water, right? So there's a ton of different things that go into it. So this has been a great partnership. Obviously, it benefits everyone in terms of the cost savings. As we all know, the cost of energy is increasing, but we're able to keep lowering the amount of money and or usage that's happening as well. We've been really focusing on creating our own events. As the touring market changes, as the US dollar changes, ebbs and flows, right? Some of the shows become perhaps more expensive, and therefore perhaps we shouldn't be, we really look at that risk mitigation. So it's really important for us to work and create our own events, partner with more people to bring more opportunities to the community. And here are some of the examples that have happened last year, but also we look to strive to create more year over year. So our charity page or component. So we get asked, I would say literally on a daily basis, emails, letters, people trying to raise funds for their cause or their opportunity. And I would happy to say that we've never said no. We always find a way to get these people something. So as we do, we track it because it's important to understand where it's going and how much is being donated. So last year we donated over $9,915 worth of tickets, $4,000 in terms of the Red Cross, and then approximately, it's really hard on this number because of the value of the guitars or the autograph posters and other swag that sort of comes along with some of the tours. So it's an approximate value of $32,000, almost $33,000 gets returned back to the community in terms of things and items on back. And so this is just a sort of a snippet. We have, you know, a file full of thank you letters and requests, etc. That we have there. The one thing that I do, I hand it out as part of the hard copy. One of the things that you know, we talked about, but I'm not sure if it's really resonated across, and so I asked for a copy, and so I made sure we hand it out. We've been getting it out there more and more and more, but there are fundraising opportunities for the community to leverage the Ucan Event Center and the events that we host to work in some of the concessions, and what happens is, as they work in it, their nonprofit gets money. And so this isn't just a staff thing where all the, you know, the money and the money goes right back into lowering the subsidy. These are opportunities where we can invite nonprofits into the building. They can work a concession or a beer portable throughout the year, or 1 or 2 events, and they have an opportunity to raise funds for their charity. And so it sort of just walks out or lays out sort of the overview, the eligibility, etc. And you know, talking to Alicia, you know, it is very. Last year, one nonprofit worked all the events last year, and they walked away to their nonprofit about $12,000. So, you know, instead of, like, you know, as another opportunity, instead of doing bake sales or, you know, raffle tickets, etc., you can perhaps leverage the opportunities that exist at the Ucan Event Center to help raise funds for your nonprofit. That's what we have for you today at this moment. It's not in the electronic copy, and we'll get you an update for your records, but it's in the hard copy. Sort of the last 2 pages, we were sort of talking about some of the unique things that happen at the building, and one of the things was, I think it's been year 3 or 4 now. Year 3 is that Jackie Lang. She is an amazing crochet artist, and it's a thing now in Dawson Creek and for the artists where we make little crochet dolls of themselves. And so here's a smattering of some of the events that happened last year of interest. The connection between the artist and Jackie has been growing, as, for example, I know ZZ Top, we gave them their dolls, and they were so excited that they did an order of 10 sets of dolls after, so they could have extra dolls around for their family, etc. So it's been a growing thing. At first, some people think it's kind of weird, but then they really look at it and really enjoy it. As I talked a little bit earlier about the Disturbed video, it's just here are some of the pictures of the dolls and etc. But at the top of it just shows it's a screenshot of the video that was recorded at the Ucan Event Center, The Sound of Silence, and over 3,474,000 views have viewed that one song, that one YouTube video. So that's been, and it says Disturbed Sound of Silence live in Dawson Creek, British Columbia, Canada. So, you know, that's a lot of eyes watching that. Have any questions at this time?
I just had one, or a couple. So, is there any a fee added to the ticket sales for parking or anything like that?
No.
Has that ever been considered?
It has. Charging for parking has been considered. It's been an ongoing conversation. It's never really. It's really, I think, a conversation needs to be had with respect to parking. It's really hard to say perhaps charge someone for parking when perhaps the parking lot is in a bit of a disarray. But it might be an opportunity to leverage to collect funds to offset some of the costs to perhaps
Yeah, because I was
redo
just
it.
thinking that most people, you know, we are number 2, which is not good enough, by the way.
That's true.
I just think that most other communities you go to, you know,
Correct.
you're actually paying part and
That's
going to these
correct.
venues,
It
and that
is
could help
definitely an
offset
opportunity.
some of those costs.
Correct.
The other question I had was, suites are all fully subscribed now,
Correct.
and are you still getting asked for
Yes.
often?
It's really an event by an event, you know, as it goes, and
Yeah.
every time we announce an event, there's a wait list. There's you know, because we do rent out We don't sell all the suites due to the fact that if we do a full house concert where the stage is as the farthest way we can do it, then we can rent all the suites. But if we have to do a half house show where we push the stage forward and we reduce the capacity, we have to relocate those suite owners to those suites where the spotlights are. And so we are for the shows that we've had and the shows that are upcoming are fully subscribed. And so I know that we've put forward for the last year some information for you to consider.
Yeah, some more suites at the West End would be awesome. Now, you touched on the American dollar, and I'm thinking, okay, is that part of the reason why we only had like 6 less events than what was budgeted?
So the number of events that we budget isn't just all about concerts. It's different family events, different opportunities in the community. It's again looking as we're starting the budgeting process now, looking at 2018, and so it's sort of looking at the trends and what we know of going forward. The whole thing about the U.S. dollar is as we consider those opportunities when every event that comes through, and we leverage our past event history and the success of them, but also and so the U.S. dollar does have an impact, but it is also part of the touring cycle. And so we've been very successful earlier in our event career, right, when the building's opened, of leveraging the events that have come through. But for example, a great example is that we did The Offspring, a band from 80s and 90s, right? And we did them several years ago, let's pick a year, let's say 2013, 2012. But what happens is that some of the other BC buildings never did them at that time, and they just did them. And so the touring cycle, we've been very successful with some of the events that we've done early in our year, and so as that touring cycle, we are passing on some of the events that perhaps some of the other venues are doing now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Ryan. Brent, thank you guys for coming in this morning, and Melanie, welcome. Good to have you here. Appreciate you coming in and giving us an update.
Thank you.
Next delegation, 6.2, we have Lyle Dakota from the Scooter Ambassador regarding request for an additional benches at the corner of 104th and 10th Street. I gotta move again. We're gonna do something about this.
Oh. One second.
Is that a wine?
Yeah, there's a one.
Yeah.
You got it?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
It'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know where
I
to
did
start
read a
here.
couple of the
morning.
ones.
Good morning, Your Honor, and I'm from the Scooter Ambassador. You can see I'm just starting things out in Dawson Creek here. I've been a couple of years playing around with it, and this is what I do, generally find resources and try and help people the best I can that are on scooters and have fun doing it at the same time. Well, the request, what I've come to City Hall about is this pictures of the park areas right downtown by the bargain store. And I've noticed a lot of people come in there they go in there, have their dinners, and I go in there a lot to have my dinners, relax and see what's downtown. And people come in for lunches and stuff like that. And different groups have been in there already. But what I was wondering if the city could help in some way of setting up a little bit better for access for scooter people, and maybe put a couple tables or something in there for people as a meeting place downtown for the people. And like I've been down there a couple times. I go by town every day. And I've been in there, I see a lot of people going there eating their lunch. Twice I've been in there and I've just picked up a little bit of the garbage that people have left sitting on the tables. So that's part of like this, my presentation's mixed up a little bit, but this is the best way I can on to do it. And I see like kids have fun down there, like you got recreation and all that stuff. And then another thing is the Dawson Creek Trail. I travel and I got a few people that travel with me on the scooters, and we do our little trail outings. We go to Pioneer Village and stuff like this. But this here trail is on the 17th Street, or between 15th and 17th Street, down in that dip. And as you can see, my scooter, well, the small picture is on an angle, like, you know, up there. Oh, there's right on the left there. You can see it, how the wheel is hanging over. My wheels are hanging over the edge of it. And in order to go on that side, to get off that, to go around up in that trail, I have to go off to the side, and there's banks on both sides. It is very dangerous in there, and I've had a lot of people telling me how dangerous it is. Bike people walking their pets, talking to me all the time about that. Trying to get somewhere, if we can get that repaired, would be absolutely great, because the city has been doing an excellent job on, I've had pictures left and right, and they've done excellent on repairing 100% of what access we've got. As in this here is this is right downtown, right in front of the courthouse. If I brought a milkshake with me, my scooter, by the time I got to the end of the block, it'd be all shook up ready for me. You know, and it's winter time. It's the worst street in Dawson Creek in the winter time. The street cleaner does not clean that street for some reason. He just goes right by it. It's just like washboard every time we go on it. And we don't get out that often with our scooters in the winter time. And what else? I guess that's about it, I guess. And like, it's a lot of times, even on 17th, or no, excuse me, down by the Canadian Tire, that access road is such a hard time. You cut across on Alaska Avenue, or no, not Alaska Avenue, yeah, Alaska Avenue.
8th Street.
8th Street. 8th Street, going across there, and you got crosswalks, but every time your scooter goes up there, like your curb, I know they just a lot of work done on the streets, but you have to weave in and out of traffic to get back on the sidewalk. And that access road, you're in and out of traffic all the way up and down all the way on that street too. Very, very dangerous sometimes. So, and I'm just hoping that the city would be able to help us out in some way in doing a little bit of helping me out and the people a little bit, because I go downtown and I enjoy doing what I do. I don't get nothing for it. It's a blast. You know, so that's what I'll just say. I don't know.
Thank you so much for coming in this morning. Do your council have any questions?
You know,
So you obviously go to help us by coming in and giving us some information and giving us a look at our infrastructure from a different perspective that
Yes.
most of us don't have.
Yes.
So we appreciate you coming in this morning and giving
Well, I
us
enjoyed it,
a presentation this morning on areas that can help us
Yeah.
do a better job in our community.
Yeah, like I love it. I love doing like Aubert, and I work a little bit with Better at Homes too. Aubert, the society, they got me going on this when I went to their course to get me out of my shell. And then I work with Better at Homes because they helped me out. So Linda and all them studies have gotten me into snooping around where I go see her, tell her what I'm doing, go for it, and a few other people from Better at Homes are backing me up.
Wow.
I just got to get situated better on Facebook because I don't know how to do it right. And every time I go to do something, they want money out of me, and I can't give them money, you know, for the Facebook. And
Well,
stuff
thank you
like
so
that.
much for coming in this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for hearing me.
We're going to take a 7-minute recess.
Thank you.
We have our next item back into the agenda now is item 2.2. We're back into councillor business. Councillor Parslow.
Yes, this matter is being brought forward as a result of the presentation we had last council meeting and the availability of $1 billion low-carbon infrastructure fund that comes on stream this September. The motion that you have before you is going to be slightly amended. I'll point out in consultation with staff where that is. I move that prior to budget discussions for fiscal year 2018, that the City of Dawson Creek reserve the roofs of its municipal buildings for a municipal solar system, that a study be undertaken to determine the solar potential of appropriate, this is where the amendment is, of appropriate city buildings and their structural capacity to support an array of solar panels, that subject to the results of the study, the city, with necessary specialty and grant writing support, apply for grants to support the purchase, installation, and operational setup of a municipal solar system, and that the city consider the application of its carbon funding to support the development of its municipal solar system. That's
Thank
my
you.
motion. I'd like to speak to it if it's second.
Moved, seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion, go ahead.
Okay, as I said in my preamble, I am aware, have become aware of the $1 billion federal low-carbon infrastructure funding coming on stream this September. I believe the example of Hudson's Hope is something that I would like to see replicated in this community. We have, I know that solar systems can be placed on the ground as well as on the roofs. I'm just trying to get us ready, and I think we can debate whether they go on roofs or on the ground at a later date. I want us to be ready to make an application and we not miss the boat. I do not know the details, whether it's 100% funding or, like it was in Hudson's Hope, which was from a gasoline tax program. But I think the savings, if we do get a major grant, will be significant. We do have within our own carbon funding, we could use some of that money to support the determination about building suitability. I know that cost, the work done in Hudson's Hope, which is a much smaller operation, ours was about $2,000 to $3,000. If we only choose selected buildings, I'd let staff do that, because obviously, you know, a domed roof would not, in my mind, lend itself to that. So we would do some of our buildings, the Encana Event Center being certainly one. And then if we, once we get that report, we can determine what future action. But it's just, I don't want us to miss the 8 ball. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Councillor Javetkov, Councillor Rogers.
So I just wondered what the financial impact will be to get all of this information prepared.
Duncan, have you had any?
So through your worship, I have not done considerable research on this subject. We've done some studies. It'll be a structural engineer looking at it. I'm assuming it would be a bit of a feasibility as well in working with someone like Don Pettit to determine the best roofs facing south and that are going to capture the appropriate amount of sunlight to make a business case out of it. So there will be a cost. This is where I had some discussion with Councillor Parslow this morning to say if you wanted to do every single building, I think we're at 77 insured. Yeah, pardon me? 74 buildings insured, so that would be a considerable cost. But if council is interested in looking at this and we want to prepare for September, we can look at at the operational budget and look if there's any room within that carbon fund or within that budget to get some of these reports done to determine if there's a building that would work. We can do that if council wants to go there. I don't know what the number is right now, and we would set it appropriately based on the budget we have.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers and Councillor Wilbur.
Did you have anything else?
Well, yeah, I was looking for a number. I mean, if we're talking about 5,000 or 50,000, that's two different things. So, maybe what we need to do is set a budget for it, like a $10,000 budget or something.
Or maybe we should just wait, see what happens.
Which would be, I'm told that other places are getting geared
So
up.
I guess it depends on the scope, as determines on how much, Duncan, that we have within the budget to, either in that carbon funding budget or in the operational budget to do some of this work.
Yes, through your worship, I mean, depending on, you're looking at something like the event center, where you have that structural component underneath, as far as your shows and your rigging steel, as well as on the roof. You have live loading of it. You have a number of different factors that come into it, versus say, a city hall or a fire hall. There's a difference there. Council would like to undertake this. We can look at it. And we'll look within that carbon fund and see what's available and see where our projects are coming in that have already been allocated. Make sure it fits within the policy. I'm not familiar with it. I'd have to look and make sure that funding can go towards this project. I think it can, but I'd have to take a look. And we can prepare so that we have some projects in September. I can't say we'd be able to do every single building, but we can work our way through there without coming back to council asking for further funding.
Councillor Rogers and Councillor Wilbur?
Yes, Mr. Parslow had said that, he didn't want to debate whether putting the panels on the roofs or putting the panels on the ground, but I think that has to be something that we have to talk about, because it does depend on the age of the roof. Mr. Pettit's presentation was excellent, and I checked the minutes and I had asked him about the is it more cost effective to have it on a roof, and he said yes. And so I did some research and I found that yes, in some parts of the world, maybe necessarily not here. There is lots of factors, like Duncan had just touched on, where we have, and it's been talked about, we have old and aging infrastructure, and that's our buildings as well. So you have to look at the life expectancy of what the building roof system is and what weight that system can handle. And because there's going to be a significant amount of snow load, because the solar panels do trap snow as well, that's going to add weight to it as well. So there's going to be a complete engineering study that's going to be going on with that. And I also believe that the amount of staff time that is going to go into this is going to be a considerable amount of staff time. We already have a fairly demanding list of items for staff to be doing right now. And does this fit in with those particular items that we're asking staff to do? Because there are some items that are on that list that have been there for a couple of years now. And now we're going to be adding another one, and possibly we're going to be adding more by the end of this meeting. It just seems like every meeting we add something else to staff. And the only other thing that I just want to make a comment on would be, because there's a grant out there and there will be a grant coming, and I get accused of this all the time, don't apply for it just because there's a grant. Is there a need? Is this something that we actually need to be doing? Is this something that was part of our 5-year financial plan? I believe that if this is something that is going to actually reduce costs in the long term, but there are going to be maintenance costs and replacement costs later on, we have to factor all of that in and then decide, do we want to do this? So I don't know, I'm sitting on the fence here whether or not saying directing staff to go out, get an engineering report and all of this other stuff when we have all of this other items that we're having staff look at. Like, is this going to be moved to the top priority? Or, and then the other thing would be the cost. So, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur and then Councillor Parslow.
Yeah, through you to staff, the first question is, will we have some historical information that maybe pertain to this, given we do already have some solar panels on buildings in the city?
So, through your worship, the solar panels that we've used in the past are a little bit nature in that we've tried to store that energy, and we haven't had a lot of success with batteries and trying to store that, so it will be a little bit different. We have done some feasibility studies on the buildings. It was done a number of years ago. Emmanuel Machado did those, so that's 12 plus years ago when those were done. They may need to be updated. There may be some information, but at this point I can't confirm if it's
Right,
if
but we'd
it's
have
still
s-
valid.
Okay, but there'd be some baseline. So, I guess my other point is that I thank you, Councillor Parslow, for being proactive, because I like to be proactive about things. But I think there's a huge cost savings that we're gonna see. We did see that in the presentation, that down the road, you know, we're going to see that. But my other question is, you had mentioned Mr. Pettit, and his presentation was excellent, but I know there's other local companies that are just as good in that field. So would this be something that we would be putting out as an RFP to have someone look at this, or what does that look like? Because I would hate to miss utilizing, giving everybody the opportunity to bid on work, right? So his presentation was great, but I just know there are other local companies that do the same work and are just as good.
So through your worship, we would utilize the purchasing policy, and once we determine where that value will find, we'll follow that policy.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Parslow.
Yes, as I said earlier, I'm wanting to see if we can replicate the Hudson's Hope experience. In that case, it was Peace Energy. We have to follow our procurement policy for sure. But the Peace Energy, they engaged appropriate people to make a determination. I know some electrical companies and so on were involved. It would not be a staff doing that work. We would engage somebody to do it, and we get ourselves in a position to determine which direction we go. As I said earlier, I don't want us to miss $1 billion and paralyze this thing by too much analysis, because it's an initial thing. I would suggest if we're only going to look at using staff determination which buildings, and I'd love the Encounter Event Center to be more energy efficient. They've done a great job as a staff, and with the support of the Carbon Fund, those graphs are just great in the report of how energy efficiency can lead to significant cuts. I'd like to see us do the same thing. I remind everybody that the system in Hudson Soap is not solar voltaic. Okay, Don Pettit did a good job of explaining how that worked. So it is somewhat different from the earlier ventures. But if we don't venture forth, we may have deep regrets. And I'd say probably 15,000 max. You know, if Hudson's Hope's $2,000 or $3,000, and we're only going to do some of our most obvious buildings, which I fully support, I can't see us spending more than 15,000. And my understanding of the Carbon Fund studies to support energy efficiency are allowable, and we do have an energy manager who can play a role in this, I'm sure. Thank you.
And I just want to comment, we're not leaping to, we're going to do this. We're going to do the study
Yeah.
to determine the feasibility of the infrastructure being installed on which municipal buildings. So that's the first step, because we can't move ahead with it unless we've got the funding in place, and that funding would have to come from the grants and the feasibility of being able to move forward with it, because it's not in our budget. Duncan?
Through your worship, just for clarification, the first point states that the city of Dawson Creek will reserve the roofs of its municipal buildings for municipal solar systems. So just for clarification, that would exclude any other groups from utilizing our roofs. I know we've received requests in the past, and so just want to be clear that moving forward, those requests would be denied until we had completed this process.
Yeah. And we're talking a very short time window here in terms of by September, so we only got a couple months.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Rogers?
Yeah, I just could say that part of Hudson Hope's experience, I was kind of involved in that through NDIT, because they had gone out and they said, oh yeah, we're going to put the panels on. And then they ended up getting funding later on to do a engineering study of the building. So that's something that I had learned, and that's part of this motion, is that we take care of an engineering study to find out the feasibility of doing it, which is the opposite of what happened up in Hudson Hope, but this is the appropriate way. But my only question would be to staff, and I don't want to put them out on a limb or anything like that, but in their opinion, in staff's opinion, is this the right way to be going, or or should we be doing something different?
Yeah, he gets to respond to the direction of council.
His opinion don't
Through your
matter.
worship, I get to respond to the direction of council.
We're gonna give him our opinion.
I don't know.
Councillor Javetkov.
Just clarification on that $3,000 from Hudson Hope. So that was a direct cost to Hudson Hope. But did they apply for an NDIT grant for $30,000 or whatever to actually complete the work? Like, what is the true cost of assessing those buildings? Like, 3,000 seems pretty minimal, I mean, when you're involving engineers. So is there an NDIT grant in there that Duncan will be securing out of our own reserves, or?
I did make a phone call on Friday, but NDIT's office on Friday was closed, and the question I wanted to find out is which grant would be available if we were to go ahead and do this, but I haven't had any call back to try and find it. I'm trying to find out if there is actually money available from NDIT, and I know that Hudson Hope did get a grant at one time, but I just wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity there, and if it was still available. So that information I can't give you.
Go ahead.
Can I suggest an amendment to the motion that we put a $15,000 limit on this work?
Sure. An amendment that we cap the initial study at 15,000.
I would second it.
Council seconded.
Oh, can I
Councillor
second
Parsons.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Can I accept it as a friendly amendment?
All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Carried. And on the main motion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any other councillor business?
Oh, I do.
Councillor Rogers.
I talked to Jeremy Linkletter yesterday from the Dawson Creek Dare to Dream Society. Okay.
Oh, you've got a society. Good.
Yes. He had said that very successful music festival again. He said they got rained out a little bit near the end there, and a couple of bands couldn't play. But the weather cleared up, and they did have the movie in the park, which was awesome. He had the double water slide thing going this year, and he said that there was not one time when there was nobody standing in line. Somebody was in the lineup all the time. So he figured that there was probably around 1,000 people who went to the event. Numbers can't be verified, but I'll use his.
Let's say 2.
And they sold 480 wristbands for $3, and those wristbands got them on the slide and the bouncy castle. And they said so that, and people had no problem paying that. And I did get the comment, this is a lot of work for just one day event. So I have a feeling he's going to be coming to council saying that he wants to take the one-day event and make it a 2-day event. So something to think about. Don't know if that'll happen for sure or not, but sounds like it.
Yeah. I went down. It was great. They did a great job. The slides were busy. The event was busy. Lots of activity around. Very, very popular. Very positive. Right? So great job, Jeremy, and all the folks that helped out. Thanks, Councillor Rogers. Any other new councillor business? We'll move to minutes. Minutes 3.1 of our regular meeting of council of June 26, 2017 for adoption. Councillor McFadden, Councillor Wilbur. Any errors or omissions in the minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence. We have a letter from Brina Casey, Parks and Rec Coordinator for Peace River Regional District, looking to do a Northern Health Active Communities grant. Councillor Parslow?
I very much like the idea and suggest that we support it. There's no monetary funding expected if it's just support the grant.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 5.2, we have a letter from Ted Clark, Northern BC Helicopter Emergency Operations Society, looking for a letter of support. Councillor Javetkov?
I'll move that we provide a letter of support.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Wilbur, discussion? Councillor Parslow?
Well, this is one of my. This is just great, but you know, I'm surprised that we haven't got this already here. It's supported by the regional district, the oilmen's. We have so many workers out in the bush. Helicopter service should be, for emergencies such as this, should be already here. So I think it's great that they're initiating this.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We're through our delegations. Item 7, report 7.1. We have a report 17077 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding our property tax collection. Councillor Wilbur?
I'll move that the report is received for information.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor McFadden. Discussion. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.2, we have report number 17112 from the Parks and Facilities Manager regarding our ice surface resurfacer replacement. Councillor Parslow?
I move the report 17112 from the Parks and Facilities Manager, request for quotations 2017-30, ice resurfacer replacement be received. Further, the Council award request for quotations 2017-30, ice resurfacer replacement to Weimar Equipment Limited at the bid price of $127,004.72. Further, that $2,004.72 be made available through the equipment pool reserve to cover the overage on the original budget.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Javetkov. Discussion. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 7.3, we have report 17113 from the Director of Development Services regarding our water meter replacement. Councillor Schumann?
Move report number 17113 from the Director of Development Services. Read the request for quotations 2017-28 water meter replacement be received. Further, that Council award request for quotations 2017-28 water meter replacement to Neptune Technology Group for $451.95 per meter plus applicable taxes.
Thank you. Seconded. Councillor Wilbur, discussion? Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.4, we have report 17114 from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding our encroachment policy. Councillor Wilbur.
I'll move that report number 17-114 from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding the encroachment policy be received. Further, that the draft policy attached to this report be approved pending the required 30-day review period, which will include an advanced public consultation process.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Schumann. Discussion. Councillor Rogers and Councillor Parslow.
Okay, I'm glad that we got this report in some aspects, and other aspects I'm not. The part that I'm happy about is maybe now the rest of the citizens of Dawson Creek will realize what this is actually costing. 3 public meetings, including staff and the facilities. You know, that involves our bylaw, our administrators, our city planners, and then having all of these meetings in facilities that I believe the city actually has to pay rent on, and staff showing up, you know, after hours, hand delivering letters to properties bordering Chamberlain Park, surveying the area and identifying 39 infractions, legal advice. Now we got the possibility of an alternate approval process through a referendum that we'd be looking at another huge cost. This is significant, and part of me doesn't even want to support this policy. Part of me says it's trespassing. You can call it encroachment if you like, but it's trespassing. And part of me just says, you know what, it's trespassing. Remove your whatever you have there and get off the city property. That would be a simple policy, because now part of this policy in future, so 5 years from now, somebody's gonna say, you know what, I wanna build something on that city property right there, but I'm not gonna ask for it because they actually have a policy that says that we can now, like, they'll go through a bunch of public consultation and stuff, and then maybe I can end up buying the property, maybe I can't. I just think that I've got a problem with it, and the main problem is the cost and the future costs. The future costs are going to be significant because if this happens somewhere else in the community, they just look back to this policy and they can just say, well, let's let it go out for public consultation and maybe we can get a referendum and maybe I'll get a variance on my property. Or maybe, here's a win-win, I can buy the property from the city. I kind of want to hear what everybody else has to say because I'm sitting here going, I don't even want to support this right now.
Thank you. Further, Councillor Javetkov, then Councillor Parslow.
So the way that the motion reads is that we approve this policy. To me, that's the way I read it. But I would like to interpret it is that we approve this policy for a 30-day review period.
That's what it is.
That's what it is, pending the required 30-day review
Yeah.
period.
Okay, well, that's what the pending, I guess, to me, if we approve it, pending a 30-day review period, does that mean we've approved it after the 30-day review period?
Brenda?
Or can we, as individuals, still make some changes to it?
So your worship, the 30-day review period allows members of the public to come forward with any concerns they have. If there's no concerns received, then it's considered approved at the end of the 30 days.
Okay, that's my concern. I don't want to approve this. I would like to have a chance after the 30-day period to make some changes.
So you want to,
I don't want to approve it now, but I'd like to have a 30-day review period.
so we want to take this policy, have council and the public have the ability to review it, and then at the end of 30 days, council moves then forward with the policy based on the input both from council and the public?
Yes.
Brenda?
Yes, we could do an amendment to the motion to that effect.
Okay. So we want the motion to say that council is receiving the recommended policy and that we will have a 30-day review period for council and the public. And at the end of that 30-day period, council would then move forward with the proposed policy for encroachment.
And that will still include the advanced public consultation.
Does that wording work?
And would like it, I'm sorry, through your worship, and you would like it to come back to
So
another?
then council would bring it back on
To
August
another
the
meeting.
20th or 22nd meeting?
August 22nd. okay.
Or
So,
August?
so could I
And-
just make an amendment then to reflect that we still get a kick at it after the 30 days? That we're not approving this?
For council approval on August
Today?
22nd. Or 21st, sorry. Is the
So is that, so that changes the motion, or is it just Brenda's an acceptable amendment, or is it change the?
It changes the motion.
So we should, yeah. So then we should either have the motion defeated or withdrawn by
That would be
agreement.
cleanest if you want to.
Well, let's just defeat it. Question?
Okay, so we'll vote on the motion if it's council's will to defeat that, and then move forward with the recommendation that we've just discussed. Is that clear? Is
Yeah.
everybody okay with that?
So moved.
All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's defeated, and now the new motion would be, do you have that wording?
No.
Encroachment policy be received.
She's got it, we'll just let her, Alicia read it.
The report -114 from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding encroachment policy we received. Further, that the draft policy attached to this report to be sent to the required 30-day review period, which will include an advanced public consultation process, after which the policy will return to council on August 21st.
And that's 30 days.
Okay.
So all we're doing is giving it tentative approval for that public input, and then council would approve it with the changes in August then.
Right.
Based on that input. yeah.
So we have that moved by
So
Councillor Wilbur, seconded by Councillor Parslow. Discussion. So- Councillor Wilbur, then Councillor
So
Parks.
during that 30-day
got something really-
process, for clarity for Councillor Javetkov, that's when each of us, as people of our community, would put our input in. Not wait till the report's all done, come back, then change and make amendments and put input in, right? We
Yep.
would do that within that 30-day process,
Yep.
like everyone else?
Yeah. Councillor Parsley?
Yeah, I'm very much in favor of much of this policy. I want to flag one concern, and that's under the enforcement section. The enforcement section says it is the intention of the city to apply this policy only when a complaint is received. I can't support that. I want it to be, I want all land usage to be monitored. And I don't think that's onerous. When we had a review of situations in this city, it was done through aerial photography, and that would alert where there might be an issue. So I am just flagging to you that I'm not cannot support. I can support the rest of the policy, and I'd like to listen to what people say about it. I am subject to being influenced, but I myself have problems with the enforcement being complaint-driven. Thank you.
And or when encroachments are identified by the city through its normal process of management of municipal land or upon request by a property owner. And so that's a change from what we've had in the past when it was strictly by complaint, I think. Duncan?
Yes, through your worship, I was going to highlight that in the policy. It does read that it's complaint or as identified by the city through its normal process and management of municipal land. Now, having said that, it's not a patrol, which I believe, and maybe I'm mistaken, that Councillor Parslow is looking for, where we are out there using our overhead GIS and we are looking for properties that are encroaching. This language would capture our current practice, and I believe Kevin wrapped it up in a committee of the whole report for council to review. You know, where we go out and we are looking at tall grass and weeds, where we are more focused on complaint, you know, and the parking and just how it all wraps together. So if council is looking for staff to be on the ground, going to properties, looking vigilantly over our GIS and marking properties and going to those homeowners, that's not our current practice. That would be a change.
Thank you. So go ahead.
So my concern, I thought as you were speaking that, oh, well, maybe I've missed something, but now listening to Duncan, it's, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, it's the continuation of long-term practice concerning this bylaw application. And I'm okay with everything to do with that, exception for this issue of demarcation. Surely, if we know that somebody's building on a road allowance, we don't ignore it. If we know somebody is extending 30 feet into a park, we see it when we're clearing out things, surely we would do something about that. Otherwise, we could be facing this issue somewhere else in the community. And I think I'm not comfortable just leaving, and I don't mean this negatively, but you know, well, yeah, if somebody chooses to complain in Crescent Park area, we'll look at that. If somebody complains in Willowbrook, if somebody's making noise and moving equipment, we'll do something. That is, I don't think that is too casual. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov and Councillor Rogers?
So, just to clarify, I mean, the motion is to move this ahead for 30 days for comment from us
Everybody.
and the public. For us to make comment, do we just randomly send in comments to Brenda, just as individuals, or do you want them on the agenda for the next meeting, or how do we do that?
Well,
Because,
I think, honestly, I think now it would be, if you want to give that feedback, give it ahead of time so that we get that feedback into it, as well as from the public who are going to do that process. Administration then will gather that, bring it back to council with the recommended policy and some of that input, both from council and the public, for us to consider in that policy, and it'll be up to council then to adopt it.
Okay.
Councillor Roger?
Yeah, as from what Mr. Parslow had said, I have no doubt in my mind at all that there is encroachment happening in other areas of the community. Anyways, because this policy will affect those as well. And the best thing I like about this 30 days to get input from the public, because the input that we've been getting mostly from the public has been the people down in Chamberlain. We have not heard from the people up on the hill or the rest of the community. So I think that this is appropriate at this time, that we get a sense of what the community does want to see regarding all of this. I need to hear it anyways. I've heard it and I've gotten an earful. But anyways, thank you.
So, and I think honestly, the people that are encroaching, that know they're encroaching, aren't gonna give you any input. The people that are encroaching that don't know they're encroaching aren't gonna give you any input. People that don't have no issue with encroachment because they know they're not encroaching aren't gonna give you any input. So it's gonna be an interesting time for 30 days to see if we get any kind of input. But I think it's a great process to move it forward and get a policy in place so that we have something that we can ensure we move it forward with. Councillor Javefka?
Yeah, just a comment, and I'll send comments into Brenda, but just listening to the comments, you know, like we built our house in 1978, we were quite aware that we have to know where our property lines were. In fact, we had a surveyor come in and establish the corners so that we could stay within the requirements of the building permit. That's an educational thing. I mean, if you're, you can call it encroachment. We call it encroachment to sort of soften it up, but it is trespass. If you're adding to your building or whatever, and you don't know where the property line is, I mean, we've had recent instances. For example, the house that was moved over on 105th or whatever, it's a requirement. You have to know where your property lines are. It's not the city's responsibility, it's you as the landowner. And that applies with all private land.
Thank you. Duncan?
So through your worship, maybe just ask Kevin to talk a little bit. We're talking a lot about building and building inspector and building process. Just talk about that process, Kevin, and kind of where, I mean, the encroachments that we are facing today generally are not new. They're generally historic, and the ones that we're facing today, we're catching early in the process as opposed to they've been there for a number of years.
Yeah. So through your worship, we've had some changes in how we do our business through the building permit process to address a number of these. There was a time that you didn't require a survey for a building permit, but what we found was there was a number of people coming for variances because as a home would later sell, we found that there was encroachment in setbacks. So now, today, if you come get a building permit, you have to have a survey completed prior to the foundation being poured. So that way, if there's an encroachment issue that crops up, that's the time to move the forms before concrete is placed. So, you know, we're addressing with a lot of that ahead of time, but that only helps if the people come in and get it. So there's still going to be a percentage that people will do things without getting any building permits, and things will happen, but I think it's been greatly reduced. As Duncan pointed out, most of what we see is historical.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. You good with the policy? Good with the motion? We'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.5, we have report number 17115 from the city planner regarding development permit 1705 from Louisiana Pacific.
I have it up.
Councillor Wilbur.
Right.
Oh, Duncan.
Through your worship, there's just one slight change with some new information. I'd ask if, with council's permission, that our planner can
Sure.
make that change.
Alex?
Through your worship, LP's requested that we reduce the securities taken to $44,600 or $68.75. So that's removing the hard surfacing portion out of the security estimates for the purpose of they at this point do not know if they're going to be completing paving or the actual cost of that, and that is a large sum of money for us to be taking on an assumption.
Okay. So, so we'll now move forward with the motion. Councillor Wilbur?
Does that reduce the percentage then in the motion?
Through your worship, it's just, we're reducing the securities amount. Just that reflects the paving portion, so LP's requested that come out, so we just need to adjust the numbers, so.
In the end,
We
so
can do
our-
that on our end with the
Perfect.
permit, just wanted council to.
Just wanted to know if I needed to read this differently. All right.
95% of the value.
It's a mouthful. That report number 17-115 from the city planner regarding the development permit application 17-05 at 8243 Road 221 and zoning amendment bylaw 4349 be received. Further, that the development permit for the expansion project at 8243 Road 221 be approved pending the 10-day notification period and receipt of the financial security in the amount of 125% of the value of landscaping, including hard servicing. Are we taking that part out? Leave it in, you're changing it?
We can remove the hard.
Okay, we'll remove, so value of landscaping, further that zoning amendment 17-02 bylaw number 4349 2017, which proposes to rezone 8243 Road 221 from M2 light industrial to M3 heavy industrial be given first and second readings, and further that staff be directed to publish the required notice for a formal public hearing to be held on August 21st, 2017.
Thank you.
Breathe.
Seconded by Councillor McFadden. Discussion. So, this is when we get the odd time we get a development permit come through. This is one of those really significant development permits. LP just celebrated their 30th anniversary of operations in Dawson Creek, providing long-term direct employment into the community and a huge indirect impact to the community. And to be seeing this development permit proposal in front of us today, where potentially we see the development of a new facility that's going to be producing siding versus OSB panel, adding currently I think it's about 160 direct jobs, adding another 50 or 60 direct jobs into the plant. I don't know what the anticipated renovation capital project of this would be, but it's got to be up in the 100 million or more when they talk about the capital plans for this facility. And the indirect impact to the city, both in terms of indirect jobs and then the construction jobs that are going to be created and doing this renovation project, and the long-term adding of another 50 or 60 jobs directly into our community and indirectly is a significant development permit to our city. The diversification of the city's economy is always one that we always strive to do, and to see the natural gas sector as strong as it is today, and agriculture and transportation and tourism and forestry with this is a big impact. And we have a representative from LP here today. Dwayne is the project manager overseeing the project, and we welcome you and thank you on behalf of LP, who will be taking this to their board next week for final approval, at which time it will be given their stamp. So I just wanted to put some context into there of how significant a development permit this is for our community. Councillor Javetkov?
You know, we talk about the benefits to the city, but you have to look at the entire south piece. The money that has gone into purchasing timber from landowners, it'd be hard to calculate, but you know, it benefits the whole area.
The old days of these guys clearing land in the south piece and pushing this stuff up into a pile and burning it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. And that's exactly how the Peace Country was homesteaded, right? It was that land was cleared and stumpage.
And then we chased fires every spring from hangovers from winter burning and spent another couple $1 million.
So anyway, thank you to LP. Thank you, Dwayne, for being here this morning. And we have the motion on the floor for the development permit. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Report 17-118 from the project manager regarding Friesen subdivision agreement update. Councillor Rogers?
Move the report number 17-118 from the project manager regarding the Friesen subdivision agreement update be received. Further, that the Friesen subdivision agreement dated for reference July the 10th, 2017 be approved.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Parslow. Discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Report 77, we have report 17119 from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding an RFQ for an airport runway sweeper. Councillor McFadden?
I'll make the motion that report number 17-119 from the Director of Corporate Administration, request for quotations 2017-31 airport runway sweeper be received. Further, that council award the RFQ to Team Eagle Limited for delivery of a new airport runway sweeper for a total amount of $318,111 plus GST.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Parslow. Discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
I'm glad I got your attention.
We have bylaws. Bylaws 8.1. We have Dawson Creek Waste Collection and Disposal Regulation. Amendment bylaw number 4358 for consideration of adoption. Councillor Parslow, Councillor Wilbur seconded. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8.2, we have our subdivision and development servicing bylaw 4353 for adoption. Councillor Schumann, Councillor Parslow. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 8.3, we have report 17117 from the Director of Corporate Administration regarding our fees and charges amendment bylaw 4351.
So moved.
Seconded by Councillor McFadden. Discussion? Councillor Rogers, then Councillor Parslow.
I can't support it. The thing that I can't support in it is that we're offering a 6-month incentive to the airport. For if somebody comes in, we say, no, we're not gonna, there's gonna be no fees. Do we offer that to any other business that's coming into Dawson Creek? Do we say, oh, we want you to move here, so we're gonna waive our taxes for you for 6 months? I know we had the conversation where I said, take that land that's downtown, give it away, offer a tax-free incentive for 1 year for somebody to build that. And at that time, I was told, no, that's not fair to everybody else. If somebody wants to move to the community and says, yeah, I'm going to move to Dawson Creek, do we say, oh, hey, we'll pay for your moving expenses, or we'll give you a tax-free break? I find that we don't offer that to anybody else. The airport is a significant cost to the citizens of Dawson Creek, as it is already, because I believe it was over $50 every time somebody sat on the plane was a subsidy for it, and I'm pretty sure it's a heck of a lot more now after the last meeting when we told the ridership was even down this year compared to last year, which was the lowest usage ever. So I don't support the 6-month incentive. I think business is business. If you're going to come here, this is what the rate is, and we shouldn't offer a free holiday on something like that. And I'll just leave it at that. I do have other stuff, but we'll see what happens with this.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow.
Okay, I have several items here. This is a big piece of work done, and we've been talking about it. But on the same area here, new scheduled passenger service incentive. I don't think we should have it in this policy. I am very nervous about this sort of thing, but I do think that the mayor, what I'd rather see is that the mayor, who does handle the economic development portfolio, through that role and as the role of the CEO of the operation, bring those incentive considerations forward on a case-by-case basis to council for review. I think there may be times when an incentive is appropriate, and if the mayor in his sterling work in this area feels it's necessary, he brings that forward to council for with his recommendation. And so I'd rather see this out of the policy. I also have problem, so I say I'm not going to say I'm against incentives right now, but I don't think it's appropriate in a policy. So the second point, just to trying to understand what is included there, it reads under A, an existing airline operating out of the Dawson Creek Regional Airport that provides a regular scheduled passenger service to, from a new destination. So let's take an example. CMA has ceased providing service direct from Dawson Creek to Vancouver. It now goes to Prince George. They would get an incentive. They would get be eligible for support of waiving the fees because it's a new location. So I think I have problems with the wording, but I would like to move an amendment that we delete number 4, new scheduled passenger service incentive, and discuss it immediately after this item on as a separate item on our agenda. So that's an amendment I'd like to make.
Duncan, so do I need to second that amendment motion first? So second, Councillor Rogers. Duncan?
So through your worship, because the fees and charges are set out through a bylaw, you can't waive those fees and charges unless it's included in the bylaw. So we've been working with our legal on this with the Fire Training Center and try to determine the best way that we could have partners within that facility but legally waive a fee. And you'll notice in that piece it says unless an agreement is formed for capital, or I don't have the exact language in front of me, but that on advice from our legal is the best way to waive a fee within a bylaw, but it needs to be included. So we can't strike for it. If council would like to waive fees, we can't strike for, but we could amend it to require council approval or to be viewed on a case-by-case basis by council or something along those lines, but we need something in the bylaw that gives council the authority to waive those fees.
Yeah.
I would be comfortable with that suggestion. I just want, you know, as I said before, there may be a need, but I don't think it should be automatic.
Okay.
So what CAO has just stated, I would support if my seconder would go along with it as well.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay. So can you just repeat that just for the minute so that we get that?
So it would be, through your worship, it would be an amendment to the language saying, oh, do you have it? Sorry, Elisa, do you have it?
Oh, I have that it would be amending number 4 that it would require council approval before waiving any fee.
Okay, so we would, yeah, on a case-by-case basis. And sorry, through your worship, Councillor Parslow had indicated something where the mayor brought that forward, and that I didn't include in my language.
No, not, yeah.
Okay, so it would be a case-by-case basis, and it would be brought forward when A or B seem to apply, but council would get to have that final approval.
Right, okay. Good. Is everybody clear on that one then?
Yeah.
So on the amendment, ready to vote? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Can I
now
just-
on the go ahead.
So we voted on the amendment.
Yeah.
So I'd like an answer to my question about the CMA and going to Prince George. I may be misreading this, but that's how I interpret that they would be eligible for an incentive because they're going to Prince George rather than to Vancouver. And I can't support that. So am I misreading it?
So through your worship, the intent was incentive for new routes. They would apply, but under the new amendment, now council would have that opportunity to.
Good answer, Duncan. Yeah.
Council would have that opportunity to approve or not approve that.
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor
Good
Javecka?
thinking, Duncan.
So, I guess I don't know what it is, but again, this is the same question as I had on the last issue where we are approving something. So the recommendation basically says that we're approving the first 3 readings. Does that mean if we don't get any comments from the public after for the adoption, that we've already approved it? Or can we personally make, like, do we go through and make all of the amendments or all of the changes that we want here today? Or can we submit them over the next 30 days or whatever the time frame is?
So through your worship, maybe Brenda can walk us through, because the first one we were dealing with was a policy and now we're looking at a bylaw and they're a little bit different.
Yeah, with the bylaw, you, when you provide the first 3 readings, you can make no more changes to that bylaw if you carry on to adoption. If you wanted to make changes to that bylaw, you'd have to rescind 3rd reading, make your changes at 2nd reading, and then reread as amended. So it does come back to the next meeting for adoption, but any changes you make need to be made
Today.
before 3rd reading.
Okay.
So a bylaw,
So let's say it
2
came
meetings.
back next meeting and you didn't want to adopt, you could move at that time to rescind 3rd reading and make amendments and reread as 3rd, but then you couldn't adopt it at the same meeting. 3rd reading and adoption need a day between each of them.
Okay.
so for clarification, bylaws take 2 meetings
Yeah.
and 3 readings, and after the 3rd reading, if you change anything, you have to start it over again. And a policy takes 30 days, and if we don't receive comment, it's approved after 30 days.
Good. Councillor
So I've
Jacques?
got a few questions then.
Yep.
So the fuel rates that are specified in there, have they been checked with our competition like Fort St. John and other nearby airports?
Through your worship, yes, the airport manager did review this.
So they are competitive rates?
Through your worship, I believe that we're lower than the competitors, and I'd have to go back through minutes, but I understand there was a report on why our rates were what they were. I think we're pretty much cost, or I'd have to take a look at it. Yeah, cost plus 50 cents a liter, I think is what it is in there. So I believe there was a history on this. I don't have it with me right now, but the airport manager did look at these rates.
Okay.
I know a little history.
So, you,
I've got a few questions.
okay, so let's let him answer them and then you can bring that back.
I'll bring up fuel.
On page 3, down in the bottom third, it says, where the new rates are somewhat different but close enough, the rates are phased in over a few years. I've noticed in the rate schedule, so we're going to 2018, but we're not at our policy level. So when do we reach our policy level? Is there a plan for incremental increases with a goal to reach our policy level in 2 years or 5 years or whatever? Or is it just kind of open like it's been since 2011? That's the last 6 years where there's been no increases. Like, I would like to see, a plan in place to accomplish what we're trying to do.
So through your worship, originally we had looked at including a 3-year plan and a rate schedule. However, it was removed and it was included to review it on a year-by-year basis. Just trying to, the outlook in 3 years and where we've come in the last 3 years as far as rates and economy and community can often factor into those, and we didn't want to lock council down in a fee in 2019 that maybe pushes the price point, and we wanted to give council that opportunity to review it at that time. And maybe ask Barry to talk briefly about this plan, because I believe there's a 2.5% increase to be considered in 2018 or 2019, sorry. Yeah, so maybe Barry, if you want to talk a little bit about that increase and then the review period moving forward.
Yeah, so if you wouldn't mind for online viewers, thanks.
You've unplugged yourself, Barry.
No, they both bend down with the crash heads.
Now, Shannon.
I was just waiting.
Great team.
You're having a bad morning, Barry.
Give it another tap.
You know, so
Parks and Rec. Woo!
just coming back from, 3 months working with our user groups, a lot of the user groups are looking for some consistency in long-term planning or strategically trying to look at their sustainability. And so we talked about a number, basically cost of living, that still, the fees still have to get approved by council, but they're trying to look long-term, Councillor Dubikoff. So this was our opportunity to, as the fees are starting to move towards those costs that are both acceptable to council and affordable to the user groups, we hope to bring more information to council in the fall as we move forward into 2019-2020 planning.
So does that mean that we will get a plan in the fall to move towards the policy criteria?
So Barry, one sec. So through your worship, some of these groups, in particular the sports fields, are the first time we did this, they had never been charged before. And so council wanted to look at the impact it had on those groups. And now, out of all the groups, they're probably the most significant increase. Increasing from up to $15 anyway for youth groups. So those fees aren't going to take place until January of 2018. So before we brought anything to council, we'd want a season to run so that we could see what those impacts are on those groups. So you wouldn't see it until fall of 2018 at the earliest to bring information back and making recommendations on where those fees go moving forward.
I just have to comment, there's two impacts. There's one on the groups, but there's also one on the taxpayers of the city. So that impact on the taxpayers of the city has got to be considered. That's why that policy was developed. And if it's sort of wishy-washy, as it's been since 2011, and we come, each time we address it, we choose not to do anything, and we're never accomplishing the terms of the policy. To me, we need something finite. The 2.5% increase is simply a cost of living. That's, everybody should be getting that all the time.
Yeah.
Do you get it on your paycheck? I do. Anyways, that's a comment. I don't know how to deal with it, but I would like to see something where we have a plan and it's not just left open-ended, and the comment of phased in over a few years. To me, it should be more tied down.
Yeah, I correct through your worship, through Duncan. I think that was those policies or those statements were brought forward by Brian through PERT, that council was reviewing those rates, that there would be some form of potential hardship on the groups, and understandably the ratepayer pays that difference, Councillor. The work that we're going to try and do is find out or try and propose to council what also is the sustainability to our sport groups. I believe that we've worked a number of years with the outside user groups to understand that there is a cost. Our challenge becomes that as we move forward and bring to council, those seasons have become very short. Youth soccer only runs 6 to 7 weeks, I think, maximum. And in order to collect those rates of that short time period, certainly would be very high. So the movement, even from I believe it was $2 up to $15, some of the pushback of the group was that's too significant. But we have a ball field, we have beautiful soccer fields and ball fields that are maintained 6 months of the year. Look, we have a lot of work that starts off right from into the spring, and our user groups are wrapping up their seasons June. Adult soccer will be done in July. So in order to get the full cost recovery of 50%, 75%, would be a burden onerous. So our work as a department is to try and work with those groups to have them realize that council needs better information in order for fees to be very relevant and important to keep sport recreation in our communities working.
Okay, anyways, in the long term, and maybe in the report that you've projected for the fall, we could maybe discuss that more. And I mean, if there's a need to change the policy, then we should be changing the policy. But one way or another, like, I don't like to leave it open-ended. There should be something that we can C. And like you say, the consistency for the users. I mean, they want to know too, eh?
Correct.
So-
Your Worship, a point to that would be, at our COW meeting, we really emphasized to our groups, and we're working very closely now with our Arena Ice groups. All 4 groups that have submitted financial data, long-term financial data, and past history, would show that our senior Canucks are totally different than even our junior Canucks, and how they raise their money, how they go to the community, how they can support a program. But both of our youth groups are fairly extensive. Just alone in regards to relationship to fees collected doesn't even cover their ice fees to date. So there are some burdens there for those groups that would say council would be putting excessive force that might decrease the amount of opportunity to play the sport. I need to collect that data. We're working with those groups to bring that information forward, that hopefully you can make those decisions as policy either changes or rates are increased or decreased over the years.
We deal with the identical issues at the ski hill. It's all parallel. It's exactly the same, except we don't have the taxpayer to rely on to pick up the slack. That's the difference. But the logistics, the pricing, the challenges, helping people to ski, and putting in financial obstacles, it's all the same.
Thank you. Sorry, you had one more?
I got a
Or
couple.
a few more? Okay, sorry.
Well, I mean, if we were
Yeah,
dealing
no,
with this at the second level,
Yeah.
then we have still time, but if we're at the third level, then today is it. So, page 4 at the bottom, C, a notation of additional fees has been added to the walkway closure costs. I'm just wondering, like, I look at these walkways and there's a cost to the city for maintaining them. Has that cost, like, if you implement a cost to an adjacent landowner to purchase those walkways that prevents them from purchasing, and then the responsibility for maintenance goes back to the city, there's a cost to the maintenance. So is that considered in this whole, when you design these costs?
You're referring to administrative, the bottom of page 4, Councillor?
Yeah, bottom of page 4, C.
So through your worship, we're talking about the walkway policy and the costs identified within the walkway policy that says if somebody wants to purchase that walkway, we'll look at this criteria, and on top of that, whatever the cost is for surveying and all that additional work would be put on the person that would like to purchase it and not the taxpayer. That's what you're referring to?
Yeah.
So in that case, and I would ask Kevin may be able to answer this, the report goes to council with a recommendation, I believe, Kevin, before any of the surveying takes place or any of those costs. There is a petition, there is some other pieces there, that is some work that is also the responsibility of the landowner. But what would the foreseeable cost be before council approval? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, through your worship, I think Duncan is correct. So it would, the process would be that if someone identified a walkway that they wanted to do, they would go around, do the work as far as petitioning and seeing if the neighborhood agreed to dispose of it. And then if council approved that, that's when the cost of surveying, appraisals, land acquisition.
And sorry, through your worship, and advertising of disposal and those costs would be incurred at that point. So
I guess my point is that if the city wants the person to purchase it, if it's not, if it's something where we do not require the walkway anymore, we'd like to dispose of it. So you go to a landowner and say, here, we'd like you to buy this, just give us a few grand, and you can buy it. Like, that's not conducive to getting rid of it. And if that's in a case where we want to dispose of it, so we don't have to incur the maintenance on into perpetuity. That's what my concern is. So has that been considered? My question is, has that been considered in this policy?
Duncan?
Through your worship, I don't believe that has been considered. I'm not aware of a case where we've gone to a landowner, and I'd have to ask Kevin and Brenda, where we've gone to a landowner and said, we would like you to purchase this land from us.
And I don't know legally if we could, because if we're selling publicly owned property, we have to advertise it for sale to everyone. Brenda?
If someone was to come to us to purchase the walkway, and if they wanted to purchase it as less than market value, they'd have to show what other value it was to the city, like not maintaining the walkway in the future. That could be considered into the market value as well. So it would just be a deal that he would come to the city on a case-by-case basis that the city could consider. So market value is number one that the city needs to get. And so if they can bring up that the city is not maintaining the walkway, that would benefit the city, then that could be considered within the market value rate.
Okay. It makes sense if it works that way, yes. That does make sense.
But just because they ask us to sell it to them doesn't mean we do.
Yeah, it's always up.
No, but if we, like, the common sense approach is if it's costing you a bunch of money and you don't need it anymore, what would you do in your own personal situation? You'd dispose of it.
The wise person would.
But it's public.
Well,
Next item.
we're supposed to be the wise ones here. Okay, now going to the actual bylaw. So that question was answered. So on page 7, for the adult rate, in the in that 2-page report that we had from the consultant, the rate was going to be increased to $8 for the single admission rate. And I see in the bylaw it's only so in this sheet here, the rate was going to be $8, but in the bylaw it's $7.50.
What we were to do is look at market force, and if we were to raise the fee up to $8, we felt it would have been a larger increase for adults, and it would have hindered them being a part of it, so we went to the $7.50 rate.
So is this here all irrelevant now?
No, it's very relevant.
But it, in this case, it doesn't, the rate is,
What we were to do is, with Brian, we had conversations with him afterwards and just looked at the market force he had suggested with the increase. So when we reviewed the increase as to what the children were raised and what the adults were raised, we tried to keep it within the market force, which is within the policy, the fees and charges policy.
how do you do market forces?
So, through your worship, you'll notice in the piece that Councillor Javakoff's referring to, there's some bold and there's some red numbers in there, and those are numbers that we were to follow up on and look at market and look at phasing and some other considerations. That's why they're bolded and that's why they're in red, is they need a further look. If you recall from his discussion here, when Brian presented to the city, he had gone through these rates, talked about the policy, talked about areas that were going to fit within the policy and areas that wouldn't fit within the policy, and the price point may be too high, and council will have to make some tougher decisions in those areas. But that's why that 8 in this one piece is bolded, and that's why the other ones are in red, because they don't fit, and they're out there, and staff had to do some work in those areas.
So does this mean adults couldn't afford the $8, but they could afford the $7.50?
Through your worship, if council would like to move it to
understand all
$8, council can do that. This is a recommendation of a phased $7.50 based on what we found throughout the communities on a similar service. If council would like to change that, council would like to receive 100%, council can do that. This is a recommendation and a starting point for council.
So what is 100%?
On a swim, 100%
Is that conducive with policy then, or?
through your worship, 100% is not council's current direction to staff. Council's current direction is 50%, but in some areas, council is directed not to receive 50%, such as arenas historically, or pools, or some of the other facilities that we operate, because that price point would be so high that the community may not be able to access it, or you may limit the people who could access it.
So on page 9, under exclusive use of leisure pool, for adult nonprofit, there's actually a reduction. From 2017 is $279.29 an hour, and 2018 has been reduced to $275. Is that market forces as well?
Do you want me to-
Sure, through your worship, Shante.
Through your worship, okay, I just gotta get to that page right there with it, so I have the percentages all here. So what happens is some of the rates, when we went and we looked at what the rates were, we divided those rates into what it would be for 8-lane lap pool. So for example, if it was $16 for a lap times 8, like for individual lap times 8, it would be $128. So we ensured that those rates would be divided by 8, and that's how we increased those rates to make sure that they were, if you rented a lane, one lane, or if you rented the whole pool, it would equal. Does that make sense? So we rent the pool by 8 lanes sometimes, and then we rent the pool by the whole pool. So when those rate reflected, it didn't reflect what 8-lane rental would be, so we adjusted it to make sure that if you rented it for 1 lane, it would be 1/8 of the cost, or if you rented the whole pool, it would be 8/8 of the cost. So we adjusted those costs to make sure that calculation was within that.
Okay, well, in this calculation, it was reduced by $4.29 on a $279 rate.
8 times.
I guess I had an original question that I didn't ask, like about formulas, and you know, what you're saying is that there are formulas, so I don't know how they apply, but this one just stuck out as, like, normally, you know, we don't reduce rates, we might round them up to $280, but.
So through your worship, behind every number in this document is a formula. It's generally based on the cost to operate the facility, as well as the number of hours that it's operable. Because it's a pool, it's a little more difficult than, say, an arena, where for the majority it's rented out, and we are utilizing those rented hours, and there's a single use at a single given point. In the pool, you have multiple uses. You have lanes going on at the same time as lessons going on at the same time as public swimming. So you need to take that entire cost of that pool, pool, leisure pool, everything combined, and you have to break those numbers out into the different pieces that are going on and what those costs are. So pools, we found through our first process to where we got to this time, we had made some mistakes in developing some of those fees the first time, because it was such a big picture, and where we thought the majority of our costs were, they were in other areas. And so you'll see some of those adjustments through here, where you've gone down from $279 to $275. If council would like to keep it at $279, the public was paying $279 previously, and council feels the council will continue to pay that, we can charge that. Pool rentals, Shante, in a given year, fairly, not very many?
Not a lot, no.
5, 6?
It would depend on the rentals, yes, there's about 5 to 6 per year.
Anyway, there's a few other ones like that too that have been reduced that I just didn't follow the rationale, you know, reducing them by 29 cents and stuff like that. Going to page 10 on the bottom, it says the 2018, so there's a fee schedule for 2017, but the 2018 fee, it says base fee calculation, pool space plus material and staff time. So is that the same formula that you used for 2017, or?
So in some of the cases with, so for fitness, we were using that base calculation. So what the base calculation is, it takes whatever, if it's adult or if it's a youth rate, it takes that rate
and then we add the staff time, and we add our material cost, and then we divide the minimum number of participants that we need to break even. So that's our minimum number, so that's how we do the programs. Rather than charge the 25, 50, or 75%, we go back to that program to make sure that when we have the minimum number that we break even, then if we have, say the minimum number is 3 and we can take 10, 4, 5, 6, and 7, if they register, that's an increase for revenue for us. So we take the base rate, whatever that is, through the fees and charges, and then add the additional cost to it.
So is that how the 2017 the rate was developed?
What we did, we tried to clean up. There was some that did it that way and some that did not do it that
Oh,
way. So
okay.
our swim lessons, for example, were not done that. We did not calculate it that way. Now we're trying to make all of our programs calculated that way. So whatever program is offered, we meet the minimum number of registrations, and then the rest of them would be revenue, would be increased revenue for us.
Okay. Page 16, and this is to do with the fire training. Just a general question, do these rates reflect all of the costs that the city would incur?
So through your worship, I would have to dig the report out that was provided to council with these rates, and it indicated, I believe it was market value, but I don't have it in front of me, but we took a look at all of these fees. Council had all of these fees and where they came from through a report from the chief, I believe. So I could dig that out and send that to council if you like. But it was based on market value, with the exception of consumables, which we're looking at cost and some cost plus 10%. But it's set at market value, and set on JI rates, Justice Institute rates. And yeah, it was a marketplace-based rate. We haven't operated the facility. We could estimate what our costs are going to be, but for the most part, we're using market value.
So does market value mean that we recover all of our costs, or if other markets are, but is there a situation where it would be costing us money to have somebody use our facilities?
The intent is to set this service up in that it's not costing the taxpayers money. We will be utilizing the facility ourselves to do training, and the intent is that in charging it out, that we are going to create some revenue opportunities. At the end of the first year, if council would like a review of where we're at, we'll have a much better idea of how this facility operates. It's relatively new. We have an idea of what it looks like. We have an idea in speaking to the other facilities and through the report of when replacement is and what that amortization should look like. But we'll have a better idea within the first year of how it operates and what that looks like. But we needed to set a fee, and market value was the best approach at this time.
I guess some of the costs in there, like staff fees and that, I assume that we would be recovering all of our fees.
Correct, yes, we are.
Costs.
Correct, in the staff fees, we are, yes. And they're also based on the Justice Institute as well, and what that fee schedule looks like.
Okay, on the bottom of page 17, new scheduled passenger service, I had basically the same comment as I think Mark and Charlie, that these incentives are required in a lot of cases, but they should be site-specific. And it concerned me if we have them in a bylaw where we automatically apply them in a situation like was mentioned, where the schedule or the flight is changed from direct to Vancouver, it goes direct to Prince George. Does that automatically kick in a 6-month waiver of the fees? It doesn't make sense. So I guess it's been dealt with, that's been amended, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had.
Thank you. Councillor Rogers, first you had a question about the fuel.
Yeah, when you're talking about fuel, I can remember, I don't know if it's still Hernan or what, but when Mr. Shute was here, he said that our fuel rates are not competitive, and that was why the private people weren't utilizing it, because the volume of fuel that we actually bring into Dawson Creek is not competitive with Fort St. John or Grand Prairie. So our fuel costs were more money. That was a year or so ago, I remember that.
But the new carrier has indicated that they were absolutely interested in having the availability of purchasing fuel from
Yeah,
you for their.
but I don't know if our
Yeah,
fuel
but I can't
rates
answer
have
that
gone
either.
down
Yeah.
because of the volume. So anyways, that was just one thing that I had. Can I keep going?
Yeah,
here?
go ahead.
Because it was kind of nice to sit in here because a lot of stuff got covered by Mr. Javetkov. But I did question why the numbers are not rounded up or rounded down like we're getting. You know, we round up, we round down all the time and stuff like that. And you know, I see some items for 82 cents and stuff like that. Should it not just be 85 cents?
80.
Well, I would think it should be 85, but.
But our policy,
round-
we're concerned with policy here. We're not concerned with.
It's just rounding down and rounding up some of the numbers would be a little bit more clear, because that's what we do.
Let,
Through your worship, it's GST, so what happens is we have the one rate, then we have to add GST on top of it. So you didn't see the GST, because in our bylaw, it's just the regular rate.
Oh,
We
okay.
add GST on top of it.
Okay,
I only
and
do that for my
there
family.
was one thing that did stick out to me, and Councillor Jabetkov had brought that up before, but on page 8 of 18, it says 6 youth in the same household, and this was amended on the last policy, I believe, when we went through policy review my first year, and I'd remembered that something about 6 youths in the same household, but we have a lot of blended families, so they are still considered family. But do they have to all be in the same house? Even though I'll probably let Paul speak to that later. But the other thing I had was these fees through policy, because ever since I got elected, I don't think the fees have been increased at all. Anyways, this is actually the first time in 3 or 4 years that the fees to the public are actually being increased, and they weren't even increased for, it's recommended 2.5% annually because of inflationary costs. So those fees for inflationary costs over the last few years, they haven't even been increased for inflationary costs. So I think that, the citizens have been getting a bargain that way. And we are behind the 8 ball a little bit more. But I do want to go into, Mr. Javetkov had brought up regarding the fire training center. And when I hear market value, that we are charging market value, there are companies that are out there that do this for this is their business, this is their living. So I did check some of those rates, and they're higher than what we're proposing here. So like a safety officer, for example, 8 hours at $350. So does that mean that we can take I know it doesn't, but so does that mean that the safety officer that we currently have at the city, we can just say, oh, you know what? We're charging you for $350. So we're going to pay you $350. I don't think it works that way. But that $350, is that including plus benefits? And does that include the administrative costs and the source deductions for that employee? So I think that the numbers, and another example would be the instructor at $400 for 8 hours. What is the daily rate of that person? Is that $400 for 8 hours work to that city employee? Is that including the source deductions and their benefits? I think that's a loss. That's a definite loss. So what we're doing is we're subsidizing the fire training center, is what is actually happening here.
so just before you go, Duncan, can you respond?
Sure. So through your worship, these fees have come to council through a report, and council directed staff to include them in a fees and charges bylaw. So we're looking at fees, and we're looking at or contemplating changes I would have liked to have done the first time it came forward, but we're here now and we're going through it. Our fees, in particular in the staffing, are to reflect our costs, but also to try and mirror the Justice Institute rates, because if we're going to charge considerably more than the Justice Institute, then we're not going to rent our facility out. People will fly or go down to the Justice Institute or bring them in to do their training. So that's a piece where the market value falls. There is a training facility in Fort St. James. That would be our closest that I'm aware of. I think Grand Prairie maybe even has done something now as well. So Spirit River, there you go. So we're trying to be competitive, but also cover our costs and fit within those other costs that are out there as well, where people could leave the region to go. So we are utilizing this facility ourselves out of our operational budget. So we are at an advantage in having this facility in town, and now we're looking at a bonus opportunity of creating some revenue out of it as well.
But we don't want to price it so high that nobody will rent it.
But what
Councilor Rogers, go ahead. Yeah.
What I keep hearing is we're, market value, 100% recovery rate, and now we're saying, oh, we want to be competitive, and we want people to utilize our facility. But now we're going to be saying to people, yeah, come utilize our facility, but then you can turn around and say to the taxpayer, yeah, by the way, everybody in town, everybody's utilizing the fire training facility, but you're subsidizing it. And, at what cost do you want to subsidize it? The natural gas fired.
But we haven't even opened it yet.
I know, and we're talking about subsidizing.
So I don't know how we can say we're subsidizing it when we haven't even opened it yet.
But the number
you're speculating that these costs aren't going to recover our costs.
I'm not speculating, I'm telling you, because the amount of money that we're
So you don't know that the
charging
Peace River Regional District, some of them directors are going to give us capital up front to help pay for the costs of it.
Yeah, but the amount of money that we pay our staff to go out there and do that is not being recovered.
So you're saying a burn building full day at $750 is not going to recover our costs?
That's not staff. That's a building.
But you're saying
I'm talking about
this is going to be subsidized by the residents, and that's not true because we haven't even opened it yet.
I'm talking about an instructor. Like, okay, if a safety officer at 8 hours is $350, then let's pay him $350 for 8 hours work. That's not the case. That's not what the case is going to end up being. Anyway, so I know that, yes, it's going to be worked on and stuff like that, but I'm saying that I'm not happy with the numbers that are written down here, because to me, it looks like the employees that are utilizing the training facility are being undercharged for what it's costing the city to pay them.
Okay, good. Thank you. Duncan?
So as we go through the bylaw, if there's pieces that council would require some further information on and would like to remove in order to keep the bylaw moving forward, but get information back on fuel or fire department, if council wants to remove those through motion, we can move that.
So maybe a better way, if council are concerned with the exact specific numbers here, and we're dealing with the policy of cost recovery, that we're going to say we want we want 110% or 115% recovery of our fire training center if we're going to utilize it for other users, rather than dealing with individual fees. Then that's a way for us to set direction to administration to say, well, look, we want this at the end of 2018. We want this fire training center rented out to other facilities to be at 110% cost recovery, so that then you can adjust those fees and charges to other users to ensure that we cost recover for those actual costs of operating it. Because then that gives you direction in terms of as you're renting it and as you're using it and you're monitoring costs, then we can absolutely determine what those costs are. We're going to have our own costs in terms of our own staff costs and our own costs for training our staff. But outside of that, when we set a policy that we're going to use this as a revenue center, then we want it at 110% or whatever.
Yeah, so Through your worship, I mean, I can tell you it's about $2,000 a day to rent the facility for full day staffing and everything along with it. I mean, if you want to direct staff that if any point it looks like we will be subsidizing use to bring back a fee amendment, we can do that if you like.
I like that.
Okay. Councillor Javecka, or sorry, Councillor Rogers, go ahead.
I like that.
Okay.
Do we need to make a motion to that effect?
I think
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe amendment.
But let's have the discussion first before
Yeah.
then we can,
Okay.
because there may be other stuff within the bylaw.
Yeah, that was that's all I had. You know, there was a few things that are in here, and it just reminded me of, you know, when I used to work in the store, and people came in wanting some free stuff. Well, I don't work there anymore, but whatever.
Councillor Parslow, then Councillor Wilbur, and then Councillor Javecka.
Okay, thank you. Well, this is a great framework, as I've said many times, for dealing with this complicated issue of fees and service. I just got a couple of questions that I'm sure if Barry was at his best would answer very quickly, but he's struggling today, aren't you? So. A day pass. As I've said in the past, that when I go to Grand Prairie and I take my grandchildren, I go swimming with them in the morning, and then they like to do a bit of shopping, and then they can go back there on their day pass. I don't usually go twice a day swimming with them, but I do it once, one of the occasions. I like that. I think we have lots of rural residents that might do the same thing. They'll come in, they might go for a swim, and they go shopping, and the kids may want to go again whilst they do something else. So why didn't you consider a day pass? Because I've talked about this before. So are there some logistical reasons?
There's a day pass.
Yeah.
There is a
It's
day
in there.
pass.
So
So
now
it
you
means,
can.
oh, I missed that altogether.
So we'd like to think that we did take your.
So you did?
leadership, yes.
Right, so that's one checked off. Good for you. You're good, I missed that. So the outliers to the policy are the ice sports and field sports. Is that a fair general statement?
Sorry, the word you.
The outliers to moving towards our desired goals are the ice-based sports and the field sports. Is that a fair general statement?
Fair.
And the pool probably as well. Sorry, through your worship. In some cases, you're not capturing 50%.
You're talking about where we potentially will hear some pushback?
No, what
Where
I'm
we're
saying,
not achieving the
potentially,
policy.
we're not really moving towards it.
For sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
arenas, pools, and fields.
I just want to look at the field sports, if I may.
I'll go because we got a little.
You know, here we have, let's take soccer. We have 22 plus players on the field, and we're charging $15 an hour. That's in the proposal. So that would come, you know, it's a rough calculation, 75 cents per person, and we consider that a big hike from what it was. I find that still very cheap. I take it the Harry Morrow Ball Diamond. This is for a team, right?
Correct.
So I go and watch my grandson play in the adult non-profit category. And obviously there's visiting teams. I don't know if they pay for the use at all. It's probably the host team, am I right, that just pays for it? So again, you've got what, 15, 14, 12, I don't know how many people on the roster, but is that considered $30 an hour? I'm surprised it's not higher. When you work it out on a per participant, I mean, I know how much some of these guys spend on beer, right? I mean,
Your grandson?
yeah, my grandson being one of them, which is another issue. But so I'm finding that we're not maybe being realistic there. I think we should be higher in those areas, because when you work it out as participant, it's peanuts. So what's your response? Why didn't we go higher there?
I think there's two things there. It's first is traditionally, those sports believe they've never paid a fee, so charging any fee is a change. It's a cultural change to the sport. Secondly, I believe there's some entitlement of the groups that built those fields. We've had those discussions several years past, right? So bring these fees forward. Like when we look just in ball fields, the additional revenue will be created is almost $24,000. That's a good step forward, but I believe from what we had in the past. And I believe these fees might even you may even see pushback, or you may hear back to the councillors that's just too high. And I hope part of that is the rationale of how we move forward and starting to look at that sustainability of the sport. I use those numbers for sure. I watched my grandson who played baseball and paid $100 for 12 sessions. Even at $15 is only, $180. They had 40 kids at that level. But that ability to sit with the user groups probably for the first time ever to look at that. These are volunteers that don't have very good planning in the sense of long term. They play for the day. We have to respect that these are volunteers in our communities that need a lot more work. Sport wouldn't happen without these, councillor. So my first response, is it fair? I believe it's more than fair. Is it a step forward from, basically $1.52 for nonprofit minor ball field to $15? It wasn't even worth the administration charge of us charging it out.
It is progress towards dealing with our fiscal issues and, in a sense, fairness to the taxpayer. Okay, I applaud all the work that's been done here, sincerely. It just seems to me, with the linkage that you use the expression over years, right? We will adjust. How many more years before we reach our policy? I mean, I like the notion of flagging what it's going to be. You talked about long-term planning. Well, yeah, let's, if you don't set a goal and you clearly publish that goal and where we're heading, then people just continue in the same old. So this is linked in part to Councillor Giovactov's, when you had that statement. I had it as well, rates phased in over a few years, and that got my attention as well. Maybe we should have a 5-year plan. I don't know. But at any rate, the ice is a problem. And I've always wondered, do we rather than sort of beating ourselves on the back and saying, well, we're heading to 50%, let's call a spade and say for some sports, and I'm thinking the ice sports, because of the heavy cost that we look at considering realizing we're going to have to subsidize the ice sports at a much higher level than other sports and live with it. Do you know what I mean? That we've abandoned the 50% for the ice sports. Say we're in the north, ice sports are important. It's got this high overcost, and this will have to be subsidized at a high level by the taxpayer public. With the fields, I think they're still getting a real good deal. You've dealt with the day pass. Inflation's been raised. I'm wondering, should we just these rates be adjusted annually by the previous year's rate of inflation, so we don't have this is just done automatically? Would that be a problem? Is it in there?
It's one of the issues we're looking at bringing back to council.
Okay. And the last question is, again, in the presentation, right?
No.
From the point of view of this is a lot of very interesting information. In the past, we've seen charts that show what 50% would look like. And that clearly indicates the degree to which this sport activity has been subsidized. Is there a reason that's not in the chart? Because I think it's a good educational piece.
Through your worship on Brian's, the third tab It does have the total unit cost.
I'm
on
looking
this
at
one.
the fees and charges amendment bylaw, the Schedule D that would be published.
Yeah, so it's not in the fees and charges bylaw, but it is in your information package that you
Yes,
received today.
yeah.
Okay,
I'm
but you'd
wondering
like
why.
it included in.
Well, I'm wondering why. There may be a good reason, but to me, one of our aspirations as a council, right, is to engage in an education program about the fiscal challenges that we're facing. And this is, I'm looking at it as a point of view of the people who are looking at this fees and charges, the official bylaw. It would be nice for them to see that, or is there a good reason why we don't have it? If there is, so be it.
So, through your worship, the cost will change annually through increases in wage and
Right.
changes in usage, and so that change happens. Generally, it's fairly slight. We can include the first piece from Brian's suggested fees and charges that shows the unit cost and what the policy suggests, if that's what council would like.
But the bylaw is going to be adjusted every year, isn't it?
Right now, at this time, we don't have inflation built into the bylaw, so council would have to go through the same process to change the
On an annual
fees,
basis.
unless council wants to amend it to put an inflation in it directly. Now.
Thank you. Councillor Parsons, do you have further?
Thank you.
Councillor Wilbur? And then Councillor Javetkov?
Mine was kind of answered actually by staff on monitoring the fire training center. I know I asked that question way back when on something else that was done. And so my understanding was whether it was utilizing staff and equipment, whatever, it was totaled up, then charged out per firefighter utilizing that training by the fire halls. So we always recouped our money and in some cases made some. So I'm not worried about it. So I like the idea of just tracking it. That was kind of where my thought was, could we not just track it? But on this, just as I'm listening to everybody, I think we went through such a great process in doing the fees and charges and looking at it and looking how we can expand that, how we can add them to like baseball, soccer that didn't have them. It was a really great process that we went through, and maybe we haven't done it every year, but at the same time, it just keeps flashing in my head that through that whole process, where is the line in quality of life? So, yes, we are always going to have to subsidize all of this to some degree to have quality of life in our community so that we don't create those gaps. So, it's maybe not always going to be perfect, and I'm not going to bicker around over 2 cents or 8 cents or rounding up or down. We put a plan in place, we put metrics in place to utilize to do this, and I think we're moving forward. So if we have to look at it annually, we look at it. But I think it was a tough change for some of those volunteers and some of these user groups to understand the cost of what it cost the city for them to have those facilities. And I commend them and I commend staff. This is a huge change, and this is going to be another huge one, and I can see some backlash coming out of this, but I also know they'll accept it because we've been upfront and forward with them. And so, we can beat this to death by pennies, but reality is we are always going to have to subsidize portions of our community to have quality of life, and our citizens understand that. So, I don't think we nickel and dime it to death so badly that we no longer have a quality of life in our community or a quality for our youth. So I would rather subsidize these things so our youth have healthy choices to make than not have healthy choices to make. And I think that has to be some consideration in the conversation.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov?
Just a comment, one of the most significant things that we provide for quality of life here is Rotary Lake. But on a different topic, I went through these 26 pages in detail, number by number, and identified a few things that I was concerned about. I didn't identify the things that I was appreciative of, like where the rates were increased, because obviously that's good. To me, there's some significant changes there. So the issue again that I brought up is, when the policy rates will be reached, I think is a significant issue. We've identified some concerns. There's a bunch of areas where there's been significant increases, but it's going forward, like what do we do? Is this, you know, I hope it's not a sort of a be-all, end-all like it was in 2011, and then there's nothing done for another 6 years. So, you know, it's just a comment at this point. The other thing with the fire rates, I liked your idea of the setting an objective of 110% recovery so that administration has, you know, something to work with. Could I make a motion that we,
Yeah, and I guess,
implement
so I
that?
just want to go back to administration before we do that, because there was 2 or 3 items within the discussion here that raised, I think, a need for us to bring some amendments to that bylaw based on some input. And so I just want to touch base with Duncan and Brenda about that first before we move forward with any of the motions. So there were 2 or 3 items, and I don't know if anybody's been keeping track of them, but I know the inflationary one was one, the timeframes was one, the fire hall was one. So how's the best way to approach it, as a one motion, or do you want a motion for each one of them? Each one. Duncan?
So, through your worship, on the fire training and the 110%, the recommendation would be that you remove that from the bylaw, because I don't know what that number is right now, and we'll need to know what the number is. So you'd have to remove it completely out of there, and we would have to add that in possibly in September after we've gone through this process and this is completed, and then reopen it up to go through a new bylaw at that time. As far as inflation, Brenda, you want a separate motion to include inflation if you're applying it to all of the fees, and what you're gonna base that on, if it's CPI or how you wanna do that, needs to be in the bylaw, so we'd have to include that. And then you also talked about unit costs and what the policy suggests and some of the Parks and Rec fees. If you wanted that in there, you'd want a motion. And if we did that, Brenda, would that, because we're not changing a fee, we would still be able to go through the first 3 readings and just change the appearance for the next meeting?
Yeah, what, each of these should be voted on separately,
Okay.
and then, it could still be given the 3 readings at this meeting.
Okay, so let's do them, let's pick them off then one at a time. And the fire hall was the first one, Duncan, and you
Sure.
want to remove that pricing now from the bylaw?
So through your worship, if council wants a specified recovery rate at 110% or whatever that may be, we will have to determine what that is and adjust all of those fees. Something else that was talked about is if at any point the fire training center is subsidizing outside users, at that point bringing forward an amendment for council to review and change.
So my thought was, honestly, it's how long is a piece of string right now, right? In terms of, until you operate it for a year, really don't know what they are. So if we set a direction that we would like administration to have a target of 110% cost recovery of the operation of the fire hall, then that gives you the flexibility within the fees and charges to set them to recover those costs over the course of the year, and then, but it's a target, and then that way it gives you the flexibility for staffing costs, fixed costs of the operations to charge them, because until you operate it, how do you know what that, if that $750 a day is going to be appropriate? So that was my reason for that.
So through your worship, one of the challenges I see is in the rental rate and determining that's $750. There's no cost to the city other than some administration to rent it out. There'd be an amortization of the asset itself where that rental cost would fit. As we go through the process, we'll have a better idea of what that timeline and life cycle of the equipment is, but that'd be well over 100.
But for 1 quarter, 2 quarters, as
Sure.
you say, okay, I'm going to charge $750, and you say, wait, that's way too much, or it's not enough dough. That gives you the ability within that 110% target
Sure.
of cost recovery then to adjust any one of those fixed charges as you see fit and as Shorty sees fit to modify and adjust those fees as necessary. Can you do it that way on the fees and charges? Brenda, you're shaking your head no. Don't shake your head no.
It would just make it difficult for this document to be put out there for users to know
I
what
see,
they're
okay.
paying.
So through your worship, maybe a suggestion. Sorry, Councillor Rogers had his hand up. I interrupted.
No, keep going, because I want to get this.
Okay, so through your worship, we're a little ways away from renting this facility out. We'll do some more work. If at any point it looks like we are subsidizing or we're not achieving our cost, I can bring that back after our first rental. If council likes, I can bring back what that looks like and where we fit within that model, and I could do that as well, and then you have a better idea after we've done our first rental.
Let's do it for a quarter or 6 months of operation, and then we can bring it back and see what it's doing, right? Councilor Roger?
We're only gonna be able to rent the thing out for a quarter anyways, because winter time, they don't do any training out there, or some of the other ones haven't. But for the fire hall training center costs, we have all that information. We were given all of that information in the reports from the feasibility studies and everything else for the fire training center, because we were told as council how much money the fire training center was going to save the citizens of Dawson Creek. We know that information. Then in the report, they say that a fire training center life expectancy is roughly 5 years. So we know what those numbers are. Like for the props and stuff like that, they only last like 5 years. So we know what all of those numbers are. And I'm thinking that you know, we're going into a business, but yet we're going to sit and wait a quarter to find out where we're at. I think we got a better idea that where we're going to end up with on our costs and stuff like that. But you'll find out that with your first couple of training sessions, you know, roughly what it's going to end up costing. So, like when you said go to a quarter,
The bylaw has to post rates, and I think we have to do that today.
Well, couldn't we just take the fire hall training center out of this bylaw and then just have another bylaw for itself and just add it into it later?
Got to have a fees and charges bylaw, I think, is what they're saying, and those rates have to be posted. So,
yeah,
I think. Go ahead, Councillor Parslow.
I would suggest that we stay with what we have. It's based upon Justice Institute. We signal to staff we would like to move to this 10%, but to separate the operating, that be 110% of the operating costs. The capital depreciation to be a fixed charge as well, but you know what I mean? So I say just let's go for now and have staff come back at another time with some revisions.
But our asset management plan, does that not cover the cost of depreciation? Is that not included in that plan?
It's 750.
Yeah.
So let's move to CPI on our rates then. And that's what you want to do, is you want to build CPI, cost of living index, into the formula for our bylaw. Councillor Schumann?
Can I ask again why we didn't do that in the first place?
Duncan?
Is there?
6 years ago.
No.
Duncan?
Why we haven't
Duncan,
done
go
it
ahead.
in this
So,
one?
you've asked Duncan?
Sure. So through your worship, if in 2013 when we initially implemented the fees, we didn't include CPI, we didn't include a fee adjustment. Some of these users were being charged for the first time. I summarized this in a report to council during a budget process. Summarize why we didn't include some of those pieces. Barry has addressed it in the report for the fees and charges, but it wasn't included in the actual bylaw, as that's council decision whether you want to do that. Some recommendations have been in the past, wait and see where the community is and where these groups are with the implementation of these new fees and get some feedback from those groups and work with them. And other approaches have been CPI goes up and we have more costs and therefore the user should have more. So it's a council decision.
What's your pleasure?
Thank you.
Councillor Parslow?
I would move that we adjust the fees and schedules on an annual basis on the previous year's CPI.
Thank you. Seconded? Councillor Rogers, discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And now, the next piece, Duncan, was the unit cost.
Correct. Yeah, there's a unit cost and what the policy suggests. We have that information that can be included if council would like that within the bylaw.
Okay. Okay, I'm looking for a motion for, if that's a pleasure.
I would make such a motion.
Okay, moved by Councillor Parslow, seconded by Councillor Rogers. Can you just, Duncan, explain it so that council get it clearly, so.
Sure. So through your worship, in the third attachment of this report, you have the suggested fees and charges from Brian and his presentation. And in that first column, you have the total unit cost of the, for instance, the lap pool at 228, and then what the policy would suggest. And there's some other areas in there. Anyway, we would include that information. So it's unit costs and what the policy suggests, and then we'll have our actual fee so that user groups can see that, a soccer park, they're actually paying less than, for instance, what the policy suggests.
Okay.
And it's visual.
Thank you. Ready for the Duncan?
Yeah,
Councillor Parslow?
speak to it is, I believe in transparency and education. And it's purely that.
Good, thank you. Ready for the question, all in favor? Opposed, it's carried, thank you. And now on the motion of the policy as it's been amended?
Can I just raise one point? I hate to, but the day pass, thank you, I found that. I'm glad that you do listen. But I have a concern with it. Now that Brenda showed me where it was, what's your rationale? So a single admission $7.50, and now you're going to, for a day pass, it's $13.13. In Grand Prairie, it's $7 and $7. So why are you guys having an 80% premium for something when Grand Prairie? Why?
There's more people.
See,
What's
for
the
clarification,
incentive?
you'd like the fee reduced?
I'm saying, why isn't it the same? You know, in Grand Prairie, it's a different philosophy, I guess. The entrance
They're also
fee
not open.
is automatically a day pass.
Duncan?
So through your worship, I see Barry's
Now he's
looking through it.
complaining about how much he has to pay.
You can't afford it.
Quality of life.
Because he used
110% parcel.
No, one, he's talking about the one right here.
You're talking about, Councillor, the,
Page 7.
yeah.
Oh, it's on page 6, isn't it, Brenda?
Yeah.
Well, it's actually page 5 of your Schedule D. Day rate can leave and come back.
That's climbing water. It's pool. You're talking pool.
Yes, keep going. 13.
For day rate can't leave. Yeah.
1.75%.
Shante says that's at a 1.75%. Yeah. So that is a high rate. Something that.
So I'm just, respect.
So it should
all-
be 750, right?
So
There may be a reason.
yeah, through your worship, if I recall the process and going through with Brian, it had to do with trying to balance days where we have a split day where we're shut and not paying double the rate, so getting a discount and paying for the entire day, because you'll have to leave the pool at 1 o'clock and you would have to pay for re-entry at 3 o'clock. So you want to give some advantage of paying for the full day up front. Maybe you come in at 9 a.m., do a couple hours, and then you come in at 3 p.m. after we've been shut and where new patrons are paying a new rate, versus the summer where we're full day rates and we don't shut down from 8 a.m. till 8 on some days, 8 p.m. So you have a rate of $7.50. If you were to come in at 9 in the morning and stay till 1, and then you were to leave and come back at 3, you'd end up paying $15. So you're receiving a discount in that sense, and you're receiving a incentive to pay for the full day instead of 2 separate rates. So there was some justification behind it. It's a new rate for us, and yeah, I mean we had to take a look at it, and we have to look at whether you want to charge a flat fee for the full day, even though there's a break within the day.
So part of that feedback would be, what we're looking for would be, is if you believe as council that's too high. We started with the formula 1.5 or 7.5 recovery.
Yeah.
But that's where we're looking for some of that feedback within the 30-day window.
Yeah. Well,
You just heard some.
to
How many people come back?
it's just a feature I kind of like. We want to encourage participation. A friend of mine works did work at the Eastlink, and she tells me that families would come, parents go shopping, they come back, and it's there, right? You paid for your day, but it's the same fee, whether you're there once or twice. You get a wristlet, a bracelet, and it's sealed on, and that's how you gain entrance. It's I guess it's a philosophical thing, I was really focused in my thinking around young children, and families, with coming to town, go shopping, go out for lunch, and kids want to go for a swim again, So I'm just sharing that as information, really. I'm not prepared to put one way or the other until staff have maybe investigated it a little later. Maybe you can deal with it next year.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion now on our third reading? On the main motion, Duncan?
Sorry, through your worship, there was some discussion regarding airport fuel, and I wasn't certain if council wanted more information on that and wanted to remove it, or if it was remaining in.
I think it's in until Councillor Javeco.
I was happy with the explanation that you gave, that you checked with the competition and we're low, so that's good.
That's my understanding.
So, make a motion that do you want a motion?
I think we have one, don't we?
We have one.
Yeah, we got one on for the third reading. It was just, we wanted to get that input in now, and we've got the amendments to it, so we're on third read. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we're at 8 minutes till noon. We have our OCP meeting starting at 12. Yes?
Yes.
So I think we break. We got lunch coming in, and then we'll have to re-adjourn open after our OCP meeting as well as our close. So.
So moved.
Move to Councillor Rogers, Councillor Wilbur.
Twice.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Yeah.
To order, and we're finished. The stuff, we're into item 9, Mayor's business, the 9.1. The first item, I updated council on the local hire website that we've been working on with the South Peace local hire. And so we've got the participation of all the other municipalities, Chatwin, Tumbler Ridge, Puscoopi, and the areas. Electoral area directors are all on site, and they're busy away working together to get it their input started to get into the system and get it loaded. Kelsey's kind of helping facilitate that. So I was looking to launch that for the local businesses and look to do it on when all of the industry guys are here, because there's a whole bunch of the industry folks, TransCanada, Pembina, Spectre, all of the industry are really interested in this local hire or this local business directory. So we're going to do it at the fair, and I've arranged to take on the big tent at the rodeo during the fair to do it. We get 200 or 300 people in attendance, and so I went out and solicited about $8,000 in sponsorship money from different businesses and companies that are interested in being a part of it. To help pay for it, because the rental of that tent is at the fairgrounds is $5,000, and so I'm going to use the remaining out of our economic development to launch this thing, as well as support that message to our local business and the industry guys. So the invitation's gone out. It's August the 10th, Thursday night. I've got the invitation to all of council. And our business folks were in partnership with the Chamber, and the Chamber have also put in $2,000 towards this event to help ensure we launch this thing effectively, as well as it gives us the opportunity to support the fair and the rodeo, and had really good response from industry. So I just wanted to give council an update on that, because I'm sure you guys would have saw the invitation come through your mail, and as I said, I've had great response, and I think last week I raised about $8,000 towards paying for the event and taking some of the pressure off of our economic development. I attended the Municipal Government Day in Grand Prairie about 3 weeks ago, and it was an invitation to all the communities, and it's a really good day, and I got a good relationship with Mayor of Grand Prairie and their folks, and so I like to support them where I can, and so I attended that event a few weeks ago, and wave the Dawson Creek flag. We attended the Canada Day Parade in Pooskoopie and put a car in to help support the Canada Day festivities at Pooskoopie, and it's a good parade, and it's a good opportunity to support our neighbors. Obviously, all of us, I think, just about were at the July 1st Centennial Time Capsule opening. Great turnout at the Mile Zero Park at the Walter Wright Pioneer Village. A really good turnout, I thought. It was a really nice afternoon, and thank the Rotary and Shell and Encana and all those folks who helped put on a barbecue, and they served a whole ton of food. And so the opening of that time capsule itself was such a significant event for when you think about our history. And for me, I was 11 years old the day that I remember that time capsule getting placed in that swimming pool. And to have that opportunity to open that time capsule that was put there by our city fathers 50 years ago and pull out some of the stuff that was in there was amazing. And it's on my desk now, the tub of materials that were in there. And so anybody that's interested in having a look at it, help yourself. So now what we've done is we've got an idea of what's in there and what was really, really significant items. And so now I've started the work of putting kind of modeling and duplicating and replicating some of that stuff to put in the time capsule for the next 50 year. And I thought what we could do is take, like the seeds as an example at Harold Lindball from the Alberta Wheat Pool. There was about 20 different seed samples, and I thought I'd talk to the guys here at Cargill and asked them if they could give us a bunch of seed samples from today. And I thought then we could put them in together with the old 50-year-old ones in the new time capsule. There was a couple of sets of centennial coins. So I thought if we went and got 150 Canada 150 set of coins, we could put that in the new time capsule. And so that's my idea, is just to work away at putting together some of the items that we can replicate from today into that new time capsule for 50 years down the road. There's a couple of items in there that I'm not sure about, and one of them is there's that bottle of rum that was put in there. It was 50 years old, and I don't know whether, and I'd like your guys' input into it, because I'm thinking we should put a bottle of something back into the time capsule for the 50 years later, but I don't know if it would be appropriate to put that bottle. Walter Wright himself bought that bottle of rum for $5.37 and was to be given to council, but Walter's daughters were part of the opening of it, and it was really I think a significant personal event for them to be part of that, where their dad was such a big part of it. And I'm wondering what you guys would think about if we gave that as a gift to the daughters for their tribute to their dad, because I don't know what would be. I'm not drinking it. But I just thought, you know what, Walter himself bought it and brought it forward, and I just thought it might be a nice gesture for the girls, and it would mean a lot to them, I'm assuming, to have something from their dad 50 years ago. Anyway, so I'll take that as a okay, and so I'm going to work away at that stuff. I'm going to get to the Historical Society now, and I'll get them to go through all of the documents, the papers, the pictures. There's some very, very cool stuff in there. And one of the things that I didn't see until I started going through it last week was Frank Riedel, the old postmaster of the Dawson Creek Post Office. There was an envelope in there, and it was to be addressed to the postmaster in Dawson Creek in 2017. And I opened it, and it's a pristine set of stamps from 1967. That I got to get to the post office and let them have a look at. So, you know what, the more you go through it, the more you realize how cool it is, and I'd like to display it someplace somehow, but I'll talk to the Historical Society about how that was. But it's a very, very significant bit of our history and our community. I really want to do the right thing with carrying it forward. Charlie?
So, yes, it was a great event, and it was good to see so many people there. Are you going to have an event for the sealing of the new capsule? Because I think there'd be quite a lot of interest.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm going to try and do, to spend the next month or two putting some of that stuff together now that I've got, we got that, and I can work away at it, pick away at it. Then we'll set something up in September, I hope to, and the college did a great job of putting that new time capsule together, and then we can get it sealed and get it put aside and set it up and display it at the, I'm assuming the Aquatic Center.
Yeah, good.
Good.
So, Your Worship, on that, I know there was the reel in there from TJ's.
Yeah.
So Simon Radcliffe is doing some video work for us for NCLGA, and I was doing an interview with him, and I think he may have spoke to you too, and I was talking to him about it, and he said he would be happy to talk to you about that and take it to Vancouver with him and have it digitized for us and
Okay.
bring it back, so.
I've been scared to death to touch that thing and look at it, so it'd be a great way to be able to give it to you. There's some stuff in there that I don't even like touching right now, you know, when I'm thinking about it in terms of, there's some real significance to it, right? So, anyway, thank you. I'd like to follow that
So if you want to follow
up.
up with Simon,
Yeah.
I have his information, but he said he'd be honored to do that for us.
Awesome, thank you. 23rd annual summer cruise, and the summer cruise was 2 weekends ago, I guess. And 430 cars. They lost 30 or 40 or 50 of them that couldn't come because of the fires, but it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and better and better, I think, in terms of how the profile that thing's getting. South Dakota, Comox, all over British Columbia and Western Canada really in entries, and what a great job how the community in the downtown, and you talk about how it comes alive with an event that's free, and people were just blown away. And I spent the time on Sunday walking around talking to some of those folks from out of town, and they just couldn't have been raving more generously about the community and what a great job this guys do in the car show, and what a fun time, and really amazing. So, you know, I think it's, you know, all of us, we struggled with, right, the financial implications of taking 10,000 off that Mile Zero cruisers, and so I think hopefully this year when we do those economic impact studies, and we can see, hopefully get some feedback and validate the data in terms of how much and what it means to our community, because the evidence on the downtown and the feedback from folks in our community was strong, but that's anecdotal. We'll see. It's just my compliments to these guys that they've done a great job of continuing to organize a really, really good big event for our community now in July that adds that one more reputation to our community of being a great event community. So. Some of us were able to go on a fire training center tour a week or so ago, and we had a bunch of discussion today about the fees and charges of it, but it's really, really, to be able to walk around and see it and see what they've got there for a training center, a training facility, and all the different components of it and the different training techniques and the training that they'll be able to do for it, I think is going to be a very, very good facility for our fire training, for our guys and gals, as well as for the regional one. But it was really informative to me to be able to walk around it and see it, and appreciate the chief and Duncan lining that up for us.
I think there's a high degree of enthusiasm about it.
Yeah, they're pumped about it. And then things that I didn't realize, where now they can do a replicated dumpster fire for training, and a vehicle fire for training, and an enclosed space, and propane tank fire, and all those different components. There's 5 or 6 different segments of training just besides the enclosed fire. The barbecue on a deck was just very, very informative.
It's interesting to hear the donations made to it as well.
Yeah, it was really good. PNG did a great job of doing a bunch of work in kind for it. So. That same day, a week ago Friday, we launched, Integra Air launched and announced the new air service from Calgary to Dawson Creek. It's going to be a daily service Monday to Friday. These guys are very excited about coming to Dawson Creek and providing a flight service. Plans are Monday morning they'll leave Calgary bright and early, and they'll turn right back around on Mondays. They'll go back fairly quickly, 10:30, 11, I think, because they want to be able to provide that service to folks who are trying to get to Calgary early on Monday. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday will be a morning flight, returning later in the afternoon, so that the Calgary industry guys can come in one day, in and out. And then Friday they'll leave about 5:30, so folks that are going to Calgary for the weekend can leave here at 5:30 and have a direct flight to Calgary. Nice. It's really, I think, honestly, for the 3 years that we've been doing these Mayor's Roundtable and interacting with the industry guys and the Enbridge guys, when I had them in my office 2 or 3 years ago, one thing I said, what can we do for you guys, and what are some of the things you need from us in terms of your developing your profile and your business in Dawson Creek? I'll never forget the vice president of Enbridge said, get us a flight to Calgary, because it's the logistics of arranging guys flying to Grand Prairie and hotels and rental cars and stuff. They said, if you can get us a flight. So we'll see. Well, hopefully this will be a a real benefit to the industry and as well the our own local residents and business sector. And I'm excited about it. I think they're really excited about coming to Dawson Creek, and they've got a plane dedicated to Dawson Creek, the spirit of Dawson Creek, and so it'll be fun to see them get it launched. I've started to engage with the chamber on a more regular basis, and so I attended their board meeting on last week. I don't know what day. And we talked about, did an update on a whole bunch of different activities within the city and the chamber directors. So we spent about an hour with them, and I think it's just a strong relationship, and we continue to build that relationship with our Chamber of Commerce and working closely with them to build the economic benefits of our community. And so that was last week. And then on Friday, I attended, gosh, I hope it was Friday, an event at the college, and it's called Mind Over Metal. And it's a introduction to welding career, sponsored by TransCanada and the Canadian Welding Association for young people aged 12 to 15. They spent a 1 week at the Northern Lights College with the welding instructors with an introduction to the welding career. And they had 3 of these programs ran over the last 3 or 4 years at different communities across Western Canada, I think. They're up to 55 now. And so I talked to some of the kids that were there, and they were making different welding techniques and wiener sticks and cowbells, and just to learn and get an exposure to the welding career. And sponsored by TransCanada, and there's TransCanada stepping up and saying we want to help build that awareness to that career for young people. And this week, I think there's 16 students coming from Horse Lake that are Aboriginal students that are going to be here doing exactly the same thing. Kids 12 to 16, I think, or 12 to 15, and they get 1 week paid for by TransCanada to get an introduction to the welding career. And I thought it was a great way for us to help build the awareness of kids into a career that's such an important career, and it's a skilled trade opportunity. So, and the kids and the parents that were there, and college had a bit of a wind-up barbecue that day, and so I just wanted to give the council a heads up on it. That's my mayor's business. Does anybody have any question?
Just no, that's just great, but did you want to do a follow-up to the...
Yes, and so I talked to Brenda during the break about the airport incentive fees, and so Brenda, I just want clarification on the policy for fees and charges that we passed.
Through your worship, we did just reword that incentive fee, so I believe it covers what council's correction was.
So we can bring that forward and
Just to be brought back on a case-by-case basis.
and then council then can either pass it or not.
Right.
So the request today for Integra Air,
Mhm.
we have to pass a special motion for that today then?
It's not,
It's not in policy.
it's not, the fees and charges bylaw isn't complete.
Okay, so we gotta wait till after, in August. Oh, yeah, that's all right, because they're, yeah,
Or would it be September?
or
It
September.
would be August.
August.
Yeah, okay.
If that's sufficient time for them.
Yeah, that's good, because they're not starting until September, and we'll have, that's sufficient time.
Your council can't have a preconceived bias on
Yeah.
until we've got public consultation.
Yeah, okay, I'm okay with that. Anything further from mayor's business? Anybody have any questions, comments, or?
Good job.
Good.
Through your worship, was there anything on the scooter request delegation?
Oh, yeah.
Can somebody mention to him about who the
Can I-
owner was?
Can I help out with that?
So I just want to so did he have a specific request, and it was that land? And he wanted, and that's not our land, that's a private land that we maintain?
Correct. Yeah, this is a lot that the city's maintained since the late 1980s, and it belongs to a different owner. Then I'm not sure when the property transfer happened, but it does not belong to the city. So if council wants us to reach out to this individual or connect the two together to see if they want to come to agreement, but right now we're maintaining private property, so there should be an agreement. to protect the city
Yeah.
To continue with that practice.
if we wanted to continue.
Okay, and do we have if we wanted to install a bench or a table or something on that, then that would be council's direction under a budget?
Yes, and with the property owners. agreement
Permission.
as well.
But first, we have to get that permission. So I think we need to direct administration then to get that approval to continue to maintain that cleaned up and approved.
Yeah, sorry, through your worship, we're working on that already. It's come to light to me now through this, and we'll be working on that. We don't need a motion from council
Okay,
to get
all right.
that agreement. We'll bring that agreement back, unless council wants to get out of that property, but our understanding is we're continuing on. Right now, the question is whether council would like us to further engage with the property owner and actually add this infrastructure or redirect, or how council would like to proceed.
Councillor Wilbur?
Well, I think the gentleman was asking, one, to have access to get on the property, so the way the chains are around there, I don't think they have access if they have mobility issues. But I also believe in his ask was for a charging station for scooters, so in there was an ask.
Is that like the plug-in?
Like to plug in, it's a normal plug-in, but that was part of the ask too, that was in his written wording, but I think he was a little nervous and didn't get that part out in speaking, so that's part of it as well.
Okay, Councillor Rogers?
When we had our break right after that, and so I talked to Lyle outside, and I had said to Lyle, do you know that that is actually not city property? And he was not aware of that. And then I said to him, and your other request was that there be a charging station. And I said to him, do you know that the Calvin Crook Center has plug-ins and it's a community center? And I don't know 100% for sure or not, but I couldn't see any problem in a scooter person wanting to go into Calvin Crook Center and charge up their scooter. So I guess I would have to ask staff, is that acceptable, that we can let him know that he could charge it up there?
Duncan?
So through your worship, we haven't made those specific requests through our agreement, but in most cases when we reach out to these groups, they're fairly open to those ideas. If council would like to relocate or redirect the individual to the Calvin Crook Center, we can work with them to ensure that can happen inside that facility.
Okay, and then the accessibility into the
park
property?
Yeah, so through your worship, we can work with the property owner to form this agreement, and as part of that, open up that.
Okay, so you've got that, you're working on that then, and you'll be able to bring that back to us in August with the understanding that if we can get the agreement in and we can get access, and then address with Kiwanis about whether they can charge or not.
Sure, and sorry, through your worship, I believe the city pays utilities in the Calvin Crook Center, so you want council's direction to communicate that this is now a charging station for scooters.
We just want to be able to communicate it to them, and they're aware of it.
Yep.
If there's, and if that creates operational issues, then what are they?
Yep.
Okay. So we don't need to do anything at this point, because you're working on the...
A resolution of support from council, just to direct
Okay.
us to work on these items would be, yeah.
Moved by Councillor Wilbur, seconded by Councillor Schumann. Discussion? Go ahead. Yeah.
So is there already picnic tables and stuff down there?
There are, but you can't get a scooter. It's not accessible to someone who's in a wheelchair, a scooter, or anything because it has seats on it. He's just asking for a table that they could actually drive their mobility vehicle up to and be able to utilize.
What I was just wondering about is we had some issues with some people and benches around town, and I was wondering if that was a space that was being utilized in that way, if there was already infrastructure in there. We've had any, remember the bench on the other end of Bargain Shop?
So,
I can
Go
fix
ahead.
this. When I talked to Lyle, he said that there is a picnic table there, but the bench has gone off of it. And he said, that's perfect, don't fix it, because we can drive our scooters right into it. So I don't know who owns the picnic table that's there now. But,
It's an accessibility issue.
that part of it, yeah, like he said, it's accessible for them to drive their scooters up because there is no bench. But then I did mention to him the other area in town, which is next to Elcan Smokehouse. There's grassy benches and stuff like that down there, and he wasn't even aware of that either. So
the next thing, though, I'm thinking about is we're not going to be asked to put paths or paved paths into it for them to be able to get the scooters in and all that, so. All right, anyway, we've got the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And that's it. Oh, Brenda?
The select committee?
Oh,
for the Rotary
thank
Day.
you. So we've got a committee that we're setting for the Rotary Lake, and we need to have a committee identified, which councillors and how many. And we're gonna have MLA Bernier and any others. And then we need to have a report back to August 21st meeting or another time for council. And I think we want to do this immediately. So do you want it the committee of the entire council, or is there just, do we want 3 or 4 councillors? Councillor
I
Javekov?
think 2 people would be enough, yourself and 1 counselor.
Okay. My problem, if we do it by August 21st, I'm going to take a couple weeks off, and then we got the fair in between, so I'm probably not going to be available. But if there's 2 other councillors that want to take it on,
I'll
Councillor
volunteer.
Javekov, Councillor Parslow, and we want MLA Bernier, we want Dale Campbell from the South Peace Mile Zero Park Society. I'm thinking about the history of the lake and all of that stuff, and I don't know if we got.
I can, through your worship, I can see if Jim is available to provide that information.
Yeah, we
I
really
haven't
need
talked
Jim.
to him. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get that 5, and then we can bring it back to the August 21st meeting. And you guys can then seek out those other supports if you need other information developed with through Duncan. So we need a motion to appoint this special committee to bring back recommendations to council by August 21st. Is that fair? Because we need to get expedited. I think we don't want to leave it any longer than that. So Councillor McFadden, you're moving. Second to Councillor Rogers. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Did that cover it? Thank you, Brenda. Diary?
Nothing to update your worship.
Consent calendar?
So moved.
It's moved by Councillor Schumann, seconded Councillor Wilbur. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Strategic priorities?
Nothing to update your worship.
Question and answer?
No one has signed up for
Media are gone. So we're going to recess to closed, and I need to add one more. We're going to have to add an item to 6.2 as per 90.2B, negotiations between the municipality and the provincial government as a reason to go to closed. So at this point, a motion to recess to close. Councillor Wilbur, second to Councillor Rogers. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.